Hello? Hello, hello? Hello? Are we alive? I will be right there. Okay. How's it going? How is it going? How is everything? Okay, wait. Let me go over there. I thought it was 11. God damn. I'm all discombobulated. One moment, please. Can you hear me? People? Peoples. Hey, Jane. Hey, Sage. Hello, everyone. I am late. I am late. I'm trying to connect this. It's giving me troubles. Switching to from switching from what's it called? Fuck. YouTube to Twitch is such a pain in the fucking ass. I have to start everything all over again. Every time I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have a not super long stream, it ends up being 8 hours. So I kinda just woke up. Discord updated itself. God damn it. Did I say high vowel movement? If not, hello. When was the last time? Not here. Maybe during the xenogender discourse with like Hans and Sansol, the original one. One moment. I forgot my headphones. Hey, John. Yes, we are reviewing his gender doc today because I discovered that he had one. Okay, wait. I think I got it. Hold on. We got it. Right? Right? Okay, good. Yes. Yes.
Like the best you get is them being sort of mutually toxic to one another, but you still nonetheless have the situation where he has a level of material power and control over comings and goings, and uses that, and seems to threaten her if there's corroborating evidence for the claim that he said I will fuck you up and things like that. Nobody's gonna view him favorably regardless of how bad she is. She could be as bad or worse, and it would be the same thing. I don't see any amount of evidence helping him in that case, because like the problem is that this wasn't like when Destiny was covering, he compared it to a clip of, I can't remember his name, but some guy breaking up a fight between his girlfriend and somebody else, and it looks like he's like physically manhandling this girl against the wall without context. And then when you see the full context, you see, no, he's actually breaking up a fight. It's all he could do. He's actually being responsible and careful in that case. The problem is we're not seeing something cut like that because we have the whole dynamic sort of bracketed there. Like we have them demonstrating that he controls her coming and going. We have him demonstrating that he's bullying her into doing tasks that she doesn't want to do. We have him demonstrating like just an incredibly toxic and controlling attitude towards his wife, and we have her the entire time like this interested me. Like her body language is really interesting. She had her hands in front of her while she was talking to him, and she seemed like very uncomfortable moving around. And like it's that's a hard sell that she's as much of a that he's as much of a victim as she is in some sense, especially once it's come out that he cut her off financially and was like planning to divorce seemingly in advance of her. So it's and he lied about that.
Oh yeah, but that part is after the recording.
That is after the recording, yeah.
Because like the moment he cuts her off, he well,
he was in a different city or state, or where was he?
I'm not sure where he was, but I know that he moved out.
Yeah, he had bought another property.
At the same time that he got a divorce attorney and tried to cut her off.
Yeah,
or did cut her off? I'm not sure.
I think he did cut her off. And left the kids with her as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck those kids. What are we talking about?
Whoa. Careful.
Oh, well, okay, fine. I'm on Twitch. I'm not on YouTube, okay? We're not like that over here. Keck.
I'm on Twitch, okay? No slurs Sunday.
Not yet. Okay, wait. Were you talking about Steven Crowder?
Can I slur the Irish?
Yes, you can, yeah.
Good. Okay, let's move us down here. There we go. That works. Okay, brilliant. Let's make you guys bigger.
Oh wait, we can't do the what is it called? The Discord.
Ico Rules is the best. PP laugh. PP laugh.
Hmm?
PP laugh.
The what?
The overlay. Shit.
The Discord overlay.
Like on where it, you know, the avatar speaking thingy for private. It's only in Discord rooms, right? Right.
I have
What are you talking
no
about?
idea.
Do you have like a PNG asset in OBS?
I mean you know what I'm talking about, the overlay, the Discord talking overlay, where it shows up when people talk? No?
The green outline?
Yeah. Wait, no.
I have it.
Not that. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? No. Never mind. Don't worry about it. I just woke up. Okay. Sorry. Never mind.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry, I thought that I said 11, but I'm a liar to myself.
Well, you said 10 or 11, and I don't think anyone confirmed it. But I woke up this morning with fucking messages from President Sunday saying it's time. And
Yes.
I was like, holy shit, dude.
Exactly. No, not time.
It's always time somewhere. I'm just keeping you on your toes.
Thank you so much, Jen
You know what
Kroll,
it is?
for 16 months.
I have
Thank
a
you, thank
debate
you.
with Lav on Friday, and I think I mixed up the times for those because Wick is always 3 p.m. sharp.
Wait,
so in
so-
my brain, it's like,
Wait, did you talk to Lav yet?
no.
Were you supposed to? You were supposed to, right?
I'm talking to her on Friday.
What about
Did it change?
gender?
What is a woman? It was gonna be about gender, or like are trans women, and then it went to what is a woman. So that was her suggestion.
Did you see the she said that she was going to be writing an article for a publication. You heard about that, right?
No.
She said that she was going to be writing an article for a publication. I can't for the life of me remember the name of it. I should find that out. But
Echo, you're crazy loud. Let me turn you down a little bit. There you go.
Or she's like, I will laugh at you to Boots. I will laugh at you.
Oh, she mentions this in the Boots. She mentions this in the Boots conversation.
Did you watch that?
I watched little bits and pieces. I wanted to go over that on stream at some point. As somebody with an unpleasant history with Boots and company, I was pleasantly surprised by how sophisticated she was in that conversation. I didn't expect
Boots?
That. Boots.
Wait, I'm sorry. Like in takes or in rhetoric, or what do you mean?
Oh, just the stuff she was drawing upon. She's more informed than I thought she was.
Oh yeah,
I disagree with her position, of course. She's like taking a gender critical stance, but I thought she surprised
she
me.
understood Butler and stuff like. I have problems with Boots' takes, but
I mean, compared to Lav, which is not like setting the bar very high.
Here's my point.
Low bar.
Okay, President Sunday. Listen.
Oh, it's sorry.
No, go ahead.
I believe that she said that it was Redux Magazine.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And if you look at Redux Magazine, their website, it's crazy. Every single like article is about like arguing that trans people are inherently pedophiles and shit like that. It's absolutely fucking monstrous.
Let's pop this up on screen. Why is my Steam up still?
Redux with 2 X's.info.
Okay. Oh, and you guys disappeared. One sec. Sorry. Boomer moment with the technology. Okay, so... God, even with 2 screens, there's just not enough space.
Can I say, while you're looking for that, can I say President Sunday? You got it.
I got it. It's below all of you, so let me move that above all of you. I think I'm going to put that down here. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, because I don't know Boots at all, so I'm not saying like intent, I'm not saying like why she has the take she does, or that she's like not a nice person, etc. But I don't know what makes it more impressive, or is it just like the...
Oh, I don't mean I'm impressed with her as a person. I just mean she surprised me in that conversation. I'm not making a general statement about her character or her her decisions or things like that. I'm literally just saying I expected I had lower expectations than what I saw.
Right, but that is like a rhetorical optical thing, right? Because ultimately she agrees with Lav completely. There's nothing.
No way. That's not
right.
No, that's not true.
No. What
No,
do they disagree about?
I missed. I can't recall the details, but I think the consensus is she roundhouse kicked her in that conversation.
Yeah, she did.
No.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But like take wise, I mean.
Take wise, there is a difference, and like I understand like the way that people will say that like gender critical feminism is basically just like a turfy or whatever. But I think that like the conversation with Boots and Lav kind of outlined the intellectual difference in there. Whereas like I think a lot of Boots's takes are like they're consistent with like her idea of what gender is. And it turns into this like gender critical view that I don't agree with. With Lav, it's specifically just like resentful of trans people in general. It's explicitly like anti-trans.
Here's
But
what I would say.
I'm sorry, but what's the difference though? Like ultimately, what I mean is, because this is how people sell you on Jesus, right? Like, what is the difference in the take?
Here's the difference. Here's the difference. So Judith Butler had to write a book on this, right? This was not common sense at a certain point in very recent history. I think this was released in like what, 1990? Like this stuff is still relatively new, and I think there's room for people to have like different opinions on the stuff, including like wholesale criticism or skepticism about the categories and stuff like that, especially since very little of this is common sense. That's one of the reasons why people like Butler are important, because they break down things that are commonsensical that really shouldn't be. And I think it's perfectly fine.
I'm still asking about the takes though, not the references.
I'm answering about the takes.
Okay.
So I think how I would classify Boots there, and one of the reasons why it impresses me that she's a little bit conversant with this stuff, is that whereas I get the distinct impression, maybe this will cost me the debate, where I get the distinct impression that Lav is just kind of saying whatever she needs to say for emotional reasons or for personal reasons or political reasons or whatever. I get the impression from what I heard from Boots that her behavior in other spheres notwithstanding, I think she has the positions that she has because she's actually wrestling with the material, and I respect that infinitely more than someone who is basically pretending to wrestle with the material for the sake of getting at people that they hate or are disgusted by for whatever reason. There is a world of difference between the two.
Well,
I think one of these...
Take-wise. I mean, like, takes like, fundamentally, what's the difference in, like, the way that it manifests in like the real world, because
So take wise, this is the way that like if you take like a
like not comparing to Lav.
Yeah. So like if you're looking at the history of feminism and what feminism has been like pointing at for a very long time, is that you have a situation where you have people that are like biologically categorized for social roles, and that this is something that happens sort of like top down. Like if you're born a woman, then you're given these womanly roles, and then you were discriminated against on those grounds. This is the way that like Boots understands it.
Yep.
Whereas like womanhood in the history of feminism, as Boots points out, is a history of like reproductive rights, being treated as like breeders, as pets, sex slaves, etc., which has its own specific lineage in that categorical sense of womanhood. And for trans people, it like if we're talking about trans women, they don't have the same historical oppression of like being treated as breeders, etc. So there's like a categorical distinction there. Whereas as she says, she would include like trans men as people that do suffer from that same historical lineage and categorization of womanhood. But
or they both, but in sort of different ways. Just
No,
because
that's
of like
no, that's not
that's
the.
what, yes, that's
No,
what
I
she
mean
said.
President
Okay,
Sunday, not you,
did-
not you, kid, not you,
Okay.
kid. I'm talking about President Sunday, because like and I'm sorry for, I have like a little burst of just having woken up energy, so I apologize for
Okay.
interrupting. What I mean is like, okay, like trans men.
And I was worried
Female.
about Kid coming on here. You're the one I had to be afraid of.
Well, that's how it always is,
No,
don't
I
you?
just poke at
You
people.
remember? Listen. Yeah, I was gonna say. Okay, this is what I was gonna say. First of all, trans men she includes in feminism. Trans women she does not. Right. I was going to say, and then Lily just said it.
Yeah.
What about Black women, women of color? Like, what about
No.
different?
Aiko, hang on. I agree with you. The takes
Right.
are bad, and we don't want Boots's takes to prevail any more than Lav's takes.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh no,
It's,
we're in agreement about that. But here's the difference. Okay, taking Boots herself as a part of the world. Boots is someone who you can engage with positively and whose mind can be changed and who can be treated with like the respect of someone who has a difference of opinion.
right.
Lav is not. Lav
Not
you
a
have
person.
to handle with a different. No, Lav's a person.
No,
but Lav's
Lav
not
is
a good
barely
person.
a person.
Okay,
Is she
potato,
presenting?
potato,
No,
potato,
I mean
okay?
like,
You can
in
actually have
private.
these discussions, right? With Boots, like I think that there's only like a couple things standing in the way of Boots having like a gender takes that I would agree with. I think the only thing standing in the way of that is not seeing gender as specifically this top-down process, but also this thing that can be affirmative. I think that she looks at gender in a pretty like resentful way, and I don't think that that adequately accounts for the experience of gender. Like that alone would completely change Boots's entire perception of gender.
I think also.
What,
I think,
resentfulness, or are you talking about Lav? Resentful
No, I was
wise?
talking about Boots, but I was talking
Yeah.
in like
Oh.
a Nietzschean sense, I guess. But like gender for Boots, gender is something that happens to you.
Right.
If you're born with a set of like sexual characteristics, you are then categorized and then oppressed based on these grounds. Because she is a gender abolitionist, nonetheless, and so that
like
is the
Mr. Girl.
process that like the moment that you were born, you were identified, that you become the identity of womanness. And this is something that always happens like top down. And so that doesn't account for forms of gender which are expressive and affirmative. It's strictly as like as a negation. And
Right.
that's the thing. So like if Boots
Oh, hang on. We lost
that.
the connection. Just hold that thought. Just
Okay.
hold it. So
Your
it's for the
stream?
audience. Yeah. It's OBS. It's just.
Is that what gender abolition is? Oh, that's like Mr. Girl's gender abolition.
It's a type of gender abolitionism.
Okay. I'm not sure about the different
Just hang
part.
on. Just hang on one sec. I want people to be able to hear you. I'm sorry. It chooses the worst time. Here, I'm gonna run ads. Sometimes it seems to like that for some reason.
Sounds like it's on purpose on their behalf.
I dare not speculate.
They're
Oh
listening.
my god. Oh, I hate YouTube so much. Here, let's refresh. Oh my god, are you serious? It's just like stuck at 0. How?
Thank you for waiting for me, by the way. I'm sorry.
No, no
Sorry.
worries.
Is this OBS?
Not you,
It's
kid. I'm just
it's
kidding.
OBS. It's OBS. It's at 0 kilobytes still. What the? Oh, here we go. We're going back up. Oh, are we back? It's saying okay. Now we're at 4,000. That was weird. Okay, I think we're back now. Sorry about that. Sorry, kid. You were in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah, so like when we're looking at Boots and we're thinking about like how are the ways that Boots's ideas of gender are like problematic. The only things that you're going to be able to point to is and the only wall in between what Boots is saying and other forms of like gender abolitionism is that gender is something which specifically happens to you based on how you're born, the sexual characteristics that you have, the biological composition that you have. That is when you start to become identified and treated as different in an essential sense. It's something that only ever happens to you for Boots. But if gender is seen as something which can be expressive and something which can also be something that doesn't relate to like this top-down oppression. If that is the only take standing between Boots and a take that I would agree with, but that one principle is what gives her this like that gender critical lens of feminism. For Lav, we have someone that like actually just fucking despises trans people, is absolutely like abhorrent when talking about trans people. Where Boots, I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that Boots is transphobic, but Lav,
Well, I think.
I mean, that doesn't fundamentally that's not what I mean. Like Lav in comparison, I just thought it was interesting how she went on and she's like, "Shut up, you're TERF too. We're both TERFs." Like, and Boots was like, "Are you seriously doing this to me right now?" Fundamentally, like I said, Lav is clearly a bad person. I'm not saying like I don't know anything about Boots. Boots could be great for all I know, right? She could have perfectly legitimate reasons for believing what she does despite being wrong. My thing is that fundamentally it is exclusionary. It is that you can express however you want. You can be whatever you want, but understand that you are not a woman. Like that is the thing. Specifically,
No, no,
like your fight
that's
is not my fight. You are not in this. You're not in
sure.
feminism. Is what
Yeah.
her take was. And
that's fair, but my position on this is and why the difference between her and Lav matters in terms of their attitude and how they arrive at their positions, is that you treat Boots as somebody to convince, you treat Lav as somebody to defeat. That's the world of difference.
I
You can
didn't
imagine a
ask about
situation.
that. I didn't. I
But
mean, I didn't ask. I just asked meant like take wise, like fundamentally.
well, we all
regardless of
agree her takes are bad. We aren't TERFs here, I don't think.
no. I mean, but
So
No,
she
no, I
also
promise.
says that she's not a TERF, right? So, but
does Boots say she's not a
fundamentally,
TERF? I think Boots is a TERF.
Boots says that she's not a TERF, and because she includes trans people in her
trans men.
But trans men.
trans men. Yeah,
She just counts them as women, so she's still excluding trans people. She just doesn't
Yes.
care about.
Thank
She
you.
says that trans men are just as much victims of being gendered as women as other women are, but that trans women are people that go out and seek womanness, which is what distinguishes them, and that's the take that I disagree with. But she doesn't call herself a TERF because she like includes trans people and she likes trans
men. I think it's important to say trans men is what's accepted.
Sure,
trans women is
you
excluded.
know exactly what I'm saying.
No,
So.
I wouldn't know if I were a layperson, and that's my whole point. Is that
But
President Sunday? No, I'm sorry. I appreciate it, but it's just like the way that when you speak with extra respect for like a person as a thinker in comparison to Lav. Like pretend Lav is not even here. It's just like
As
the
soon as we're
ideas
talking
themselves.
about a comparison to Lav, that is low praise, my friend. We are not making a grandiose statement about Boots' mental powers by comparing her favorably to Lav.
Can we just like just remove the person, remove Boots as a person from like the takes, because fundamentally like saying that trans
Look, if you
people
know,
are included is not the case. because it's still
It's not
it
the
doesn't
case.
count. Yes, there you
No, it
go.
doesn't
But
count.
you,
Yeah,
President
she
Sunday, you saying that she understands or
no
engages with
no
more
no. I said
complex like
which she does. That's a well.
yes,
Like
which is
here.
true, which is not a virtue necessarily. I'm just telling you how I
No, I think
interpret it
that is
from
a
what
virtue.
you says
No, I think
or
that is a
you
virtue
say.
necessarily. That's exactly what I'm saying. I think that there's actually like a serious positive difference between her and Lav on that front.
So
What?
like one big problem that I would have with this is that like gender is really complicated. It's a really complicated concept for people to wrestle with. And if people are just simply wrong about gender, that's not something that I'm necessarily going to be up in arms about.
Yeah.
If someone is like malicious about gender, then that's going to be something that I will be up in arms about.
Exactly.
But if someone's just happens to be wrong, but they're trying to figure out what's going on, like I respect that like a lot more. So like even if you come out with like the wrong takes, and maybe those wrong takes are stuff that would like that people would be greatly upset about. I think that it's fair to recognize just how complicated this is. Like the average person is not going to be able to understand any of this, right?
Right.
The average person that you talk to is not going to be able to understand any of this. The average person is going to be viewing gender in a very sexed way. And I don't think that like we would be coming at them with the same vitriol, because it's a really complicated conversation. There's like deep philosophy involved. You know, so
Speaking
I
of
don't.
which, very
but
quickly,
I'm
very quickly, just one sec before we move on, because Boots will see this in all likelihood. She did have a very Butlerian take. Love that word, Butlerian take on gender in her conversation with Lav. If she actually reads Butler directly, what she might find interesting is that in the very section where she introduces the sex-gender distinction, she also problematizes the sex distinction as possibly itself a manifestation of gender as well. And so the circularity might be in the other direction, where it's not that, and in her language, it's not that gender is to sex as sex is to nature. It may also be that sex itself is itself simply another level of gender, which you know seems on some analysis to be somewhat true, because what is picked out as the feminine, it's not actually by reference to reproductive role, is it? Because for example, a celibate person with ovaries is not necessarily contributing reproductively in the way that a gender essentialist will assume, things of that sort. So it's worth actually looking into. I think
that's all true.
yeah.
That's all true.
Yeah.
But functionally, like take wise, because if you like, no
The
matter
takes are
how
bad.
it's
The takes
no
are bad.
right, but like
Yeah.
I always give you shit for this, President Sunday, because you do assume a lot about intention, and it affects the way that it's like the person's like presented, I think, and it's not necessarily like regardless, like okay, you don't know if someone would change, like you don't what? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is acknowledging that Boots is a little bit conversant with the literature, and that's a positive, really that dangerous in this particular case?
No,
I'm
it's not. It's not
about...
that it's dangerous, and I don't want to like. I'm not trying to shit on Boots at all. It would work with anyone else in this situation, but you know, some people do have the understanding, the tools, and do engage in deeper levels with things, but still to a certain end. Uh, just because just because you come to a certain conclusion that is one of inclusion, doesn't mean that someone else will have the same, I guess, driving forces within them that of like of value, what they value. Like, is it first and foremost, like I don't think that she hates trans. I mean, I have no idea who hates what, but
Look,
it just doesn't. I don't.
look. Here's the thing, Echo. At a certain point in the not so distant past, I had the same position as Boots. Okay.
I'm not
So,
even hating. Listen, I'm
like,
not. I'm not trying to shit on anyone for having bad takes. It's just, is someone being completely forthcoming with their takes? Because I'm just like, it's really just like, oh,
We
saying
have to
that you're
assume so.
not.
Yeah, we have to assume so. Yeah.
I mean,
mean,
like
there
being.
is
No, we
with
don't.
like
We
I'm gonna be really
assume
nice
what?
about this, but like in the same sense that you said that it might be the case that President Sunday is like assuming some level of intention. When you say things like, well, they're really smart and they have all the tools to have a better conclusion, then this kind of presupposes that like they have otherwise ignored the correct conclusion for vague reasons why they came to the like the wrong conclusion, which
Oh,
is
it's a
just gonna be
possibility. I'm not saying if that's Boots or not. I have no idea. I'm just saying like, um, you know, like when it comes to beliefs, people can have all different reasons as to why, in different ways that they encourage those things or put forth their arguments. But we don't actually we don't know either way. Like, is it when you say that you're trans inclusive, but it's only like if you're biologically female, then that's not any
Oh yeah,
different.
well, no, and I'm in agreement with you. I don't buy that part of what she's saying. I think that's a bad position that misunderstands or is being disingenuous depending on her intentions.
Right. Forget the intentions part because I don't know, and
No, no, no,
anyone can
but
change in a
no,
better or
like
worse.
sure, but we have to make judgment calls nonetheless because we differ in how we treat people based upon a perception that this person is like reasonable and this person is attractable, right?
Well,
So
I
like
mean,
I will approach somebody who I perceive to be disingenuous and motivated in a different way than I will approach someone who I believe to be mistaken.
of course.
Yeah,
Right.
well that's all I'm
That's
saying.
also not what I was asking. So it's like fun. It's at the core. It's at the core. It's like, what is the person saying? What is actually being said, and what are you like
Yeah. No,
assuming
but
that
we're all
they're
in agreement.
saying?
We are all in agreement on that. We're all on the same side. Bad take, wrong, harmful if prevalent, right? Kid?
yeah, I mean the only
agree? Okay.
fundamental difference that I'm seeing here is that Aiko seems to be a little bit uncomfortable with the withholding of moral judgment in this case, whereas like, well, if it is ultimately like just as negative as this other thing, then like why withhold the moral judgment?
Sure.
The reason why-
No. Oh, so let me hang on. Boots. Bad take, uninformed. You're gonna cause harm. Fix it. Something like that.
You don't
Work for
have
you?
to even do that. Boost doesn't have to change. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not saying
We
to,
want
I'm
her to,
saying that
though.
based on if you morally value something. If you don't, that's completely fine. You don't have to value anything. But if you, I'm speaking from like the point of view of someone, like what's the, like it seems like it's the framing that's different.
No, because I do morally value that, and I think that's important because that's the window that actually gets people to change their positions in a
Right.
real way. Yeah, that's
But
a
you're
different universe of
assuming,
person.
right. But like,
I'm not assuming. I'm not assuming at all. I'm saying that the stuff that she does indicates that as like a possible factor in what's led her to where she is, which is different from Lav. Different
oh yeah,
biographies.
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
I'm still not comparing her to Lav. I will let this go in a moment. I just am really trying to say like divorcing, just looking at the words, and this is how like going through all the Illuminati shit and the Edwin shit and whatever. Like, I'm not comparing her to them, but when I see someone explain what their position is, and there's something that is like not quite like, is it really that? And then I ask why. It was just like really the trans not being trans exclusionary thing that made me a little bit fuck, what's the word?
Unnerved?
I don't know. Just feeling like there's not, like it's not completely all out there. Or I mean like not completely, a little bit more like strategic. I don't know. maybe none of those words are right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared
the
to.
only thing that I would say is that I think it's a lot more complicated than just whether or not, like, when we're talking about a TERF and trans exclusionary radical feminism, we're talking about like a bunch of different like either I don't even know if I would call like some like what Lav has like theories, but like what Boots has is a conflict with the theory of feminism and an understanding of gender. But Lav is totally different. So like you can say that like if you want to make the argument that they're both turfy, that's completely fine. But there's a very clear distinction about like the theoretical difference between Boots and Lav, which like equating them on the same like moral ground is just
No.
like I think not.
I also
don't-
bluntly like
No, I never would.
Well, it would be technically correct to refer to Boots as a turf. Like the term is used effectively as a slur, a just one in most cases, but in this particular case, I don't think it would be productive to deploy that in that way.
Right. And that's fine. I wouldn't do any of this, right?
Yeah.
It's just the fact that I feel like we're skipping steps. Like when and by we I mean you, my precious friend. Like when you go automatically to the next, like what would be productive, and it's like, hold on, what is even like lay out what is actually there first, and then you can decide how you want to engage with it. Like first, what is it? Then you can decide if you want to engage.
Okay, so maybe that went
That's it.
unspoken. So here's my answer.
Not
to that.
ever unspoken. This is Twitch poll, okay? Kind of.
Fine. But what I'm saying though is like, what makes me change my attitude towards Boots is because what is there is evidence, however tenuous, that this person is actually trying to earnestly engage with the material. And that means that this is a person who's capable of growing.
That's totally fine. Yeah,
that's
totally fine.
That's it.
That is totally fine. My point was only establish the thing before you try to figure out if like they can be whatever. I guess like accept
this is what
them.
I think that we should do. This is what I think that we should do about this, because one, I think it's not necessarily fair to outline all the ways that Boots is wrong without going into like an actual like argument of like what gender is, etc., which is something which we're going to be getting to
True.
Here in a moment with Tom's document, right? So like we can keep Boots' argument in the back of our head while we talk about Tom's document here, or else we're going to be retreading a lot of the same shit, and then it's going to be like, okay, well then why do we even read this, right?
Oh yeah, sounds good. Thank you for humoring me. I appreciate it.
No worries. So how about that document? Do either of you have it ready to hand?
I have it ready.
Good.
For my viewers.
Okay.
Are you able to share that in the? You're able to share that in the. Or I guess don't share it in the thing. Can you link it to me and I'll put it on my screen as well? Or just put it in the group chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in the group chat.
Thanks. Can you take this away from me?
Wait, let me make sure I'm not leaking DMs.
Careful, it's still. Thank you.
The pink document.
Here we go.
Also, hello chat. Hello everyone's chats. Mine, kids.
Hello.
President Sunday.
Oh, and KidNotKin on Twitter and YouTube. It's exactly what it sounds like. KIDNOTKIN. Go give him some love, chat.
Appropriate.
But
love.
open another tab when you do so. I'll
love.
see if the numbers drop.
The drop.
I said, but open another tab, chat. I'll see if the numbers drop. I'm making a joke.
Okay. I have no idea.
I'm saying don't close out of my stream when you go to his stream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. All right, so how should we do this? I haven't looked. I only saw what Kid put on the screen. I wanted it to not have any spoilers, so.
All right. Let me open this guy up.
I'll put it on the screen too.
Actually, I'm going to download this as a PDF.
Your mom is a PDF. Okay, just
Whoa,
kidding.
you can't say
Never
that
mind.
anymore.
Never mind. I just realized.
This is a less innocent time than you are used to.
Lots of shit. Wait.
There's no salvaging this one, Aiko. It's over.
Rip. Well, I've already been called a pedophile this month, so
Were you?
how many
Who
times?
called you a pedophile?
Edwin, because he's mad.
I thought you said you called him a pedophile.
No, I don't call people. I didn't even call Mr. Girl a
You
pedophile.
literally
You just called my mother a pedophile.
A PDF file.
Chud logic. Aiko just called my mother a pedophile. What are you gonna do about this? Okay.
Address the allegations. What are you gonna do about it? Exactly. Exactly.
This wench has insulted my bloodline.
True.
All right. Gendered brain. So
You guys all have this?
I have it on screen. I can share the window with you guys.
Yeah, that might be better for me. My windows are.
Here, I'm just gonna close.
We can do that. Just
guys
make sure
for-
you zoom in a hell of a lot for the audience.
Oh, actually, then I will just make it. I'll just make it work.
Okay, there we go. Can you see that? Does that work? And yeah, I can zoom in. All right, and I'll pull you guys back up. Then I will. How do you? Oh, that's not going to work, is it? That messes up my whole thing.
Yeah, I'll just put
damn.
it up on mine.
Okay, why don't we
my
all
own.
just have it up? Why don't we all just have it up and we'll just read through it on our own side?
Oh, I'll get it up. Just kidding. Rip. Just kidding.
Either way works for me.
I mean, I'm not kidding. Oh, okay, no. I'll ask eventually. Afterwards. Okay. Ignoring this. Shit. How does this work? All right. I got you guys again.
Oh, thank God, it's only 10 pages.
Yes.
And some of them are half pages. Oh, this gets better and better. Do you want me to just read through it?
Yeah. That works.
Alright.
I feel like you have the best reading voice. I mean, I can go back and forth with you, but
You're pretty good. I'll tell you what, if my voice gets tired, I'll hand it off to you, okay?
okay.
Or if there's something in particular you want to hijack.
Yeah, just tell me to shut up and I'll give you the floor. All right, the gendered brain. In this document, I will explain gender from a conceptual/pragmatic sense, how it aligns with the realities of language and biology, and then refute common arguments I see on both sides of this debate. I work in linguistic marketing, but I am not a linguist in the traditional sense that I went to a university and got a linguistics degree. I've taken classes, read books, and I've practiced linguistics at work in a rhetorical sense. This does not make me an authority on the matter, but instead gives me the ability to help others explore topics and give them the language to categorize and express their thoughts. I've spent over 3 years studying the topic of gender, as I see so many struggle to explain their thoughts while engaging in a complex area that really challenges their social norms and language barriers. I'll provide sources, authorities, and books that have shaped my understanding on the topic based on the best available information, and I'll explain rational thought processes I expect from those with this information. I am not making a prescriptive claim, as to how one ought to think about gender, but instead descriptive claims as to what gender is in a pragmatic sense, and why I believe it to be what it is. I'm interested to see what he means by a pragmatic sense later on. This document is not meant to tell you how to think of gender, but to give you a starting place for the different aspects to take into consideration. This was written a couple paragraphs at a time over a year, so it may be repetitive and have errors. If you have corrections, let me know. This doc will become more coherent over time. When was this published originally? Does anybody know?
Does it say? I don't think it's.
He says over a year, so like, I don't know if he published it a bit at a time, but
Over a year?
Yeah, he says this was written a couple paragraphs at a time over a year, so I don't know if he published it as it went.
One
Oh,
second.
shit, okay.
Rhizome, thank you for the raid. The rot doesn't stop. Very nice. I'm here with KidNotKin and President Sunday. Hello, everyone. We are about to go over. We're just starting. You're just in time, actually, because we are going over tomfooleries, gender, doc of some sort. Thank you, thank you.
This is an education stream, okay? So get
Yes.
comfy.
Yes,
Okay, you're gonna learn some shit
education.
today. The brain
Also,
rot's over. You're gonna learn some shit now.
Ico rules is the best. PP laugh.
thank you so much for subscribing. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'll say hi a little bit later, and yeah,
No, we
I
will.
won't
We will
hold them.
permit. We will permit the niceties. It's okay. You're on Twitch. This is how you slaves of Amazon have to operate. I understand.
Everyone, go follow Rhizome, regardless of me being
Ico rules is
on
the best. PP laugh. PP
beholden to Twitch.
PP laugh.
Thank you so much, Leah. Rhizome, good to see you. We have to catch up soon. Okay. Yes, thank you, everyone. I'll say hi a little later. We are reading
Ico
about
rules
the
is the
gendered
best. PP
brain.
laugh. PP laugh. PP laugh.
I think something like that.
We just got through. We just got through the intro, so you're not late. You didn't miss anything.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Who the fuck is Rhizium?
There you
Can I
go.
continue, Aiko?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
please do.
Gender.
Okay, cool. Thanks for linking the doc in the chat also. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Some deny that gender can be conceptual, but say it is instead purely biological. Yet we can empirically prove that this isn't true. Just as those who say gender is purely a social construct can be proven wrong biologically. Though, I don't believe anyone truly believes either of those arguments. Things that start off with a more objective idea can become more conceptual over time. A plane is an aircraft that can fly humans in the air. A toy plane or a paper plane is only a plane in a conceptual sense because it fits our idea or shape or form or prototype of a plane. Yet no one gets upset when you call these other objects a plane. A parent can be two people who mated to have a child and are therefore biological parents. This role of a parent also spawned a concept, so now those who adopt a child fill this role and are now also called parents. No one argues if a parent is purely biological or socially constructed, and to make those arguments for what a woman is would be just as nonsensical, since both are biological and social roles. Do we want to break this? Do we want to break this down, or do we want to keep going?
Well, I wanted to say something about the parent thing. I mean,
Yeah.
the plain distinction is just like, okay, so there are such things as social concepts. Got it. For the parent thing, I don't know how comparable this is because it is like it's not like a bipolar concept. Like there's only like more or less parent based on like if you're like a step parent, if you're like a legal guardian or whatever, and it's basically just that. It's pretty descriptive of just like being an authority to children, right?
Yeah, adopted. Yeah, in
And
charge of the child.
Not exactly though. Not exactly though. So here's where I think he's the distinction he's making. So Spider-Man, right? End of Spider-Man 1. I have a father. His name is Ben Parker. That is objectively not his father. That is his father or mother's brother, or could even be their brother-in-law. We have no idea. That person is an authority figure, but he also has a biological father, who is not a father in that way at all. So this is like a radical like disjunction between the two. So I think what he's getting at is there's woman in the sense of he's essentializing woman as the biological category, and then allowing for woman additionally as the social category, but he's sort of insisting on the former one as well, which is kind of interesting. So he's kind of packing in, if I'm reading this right. It's possible I'm not. I've just coming off 2 hours of Illuminati. He's packing in sort of an essentialized notion of woman as biologically female, sort of in
Like,
this setup here.
Like the root, the seed from which women spring from. You
Yeah,
mean?
like with the plane
Concept-
thing, like
yeah.
at first we have a plane, and then we have things that reference the concept of a plane, but there still is a plane, right? Whereas like and same with like parent, with like there's the biological parent, and then people that resemble the concept of that parent.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then
Uncle Ben versus
following
Peter
it would
Parker's
be,
father. Yeah.
It's always reference to the biological reality of womanness. I think
Is this
we're
like
one
the
paragraph there.
chair? The chair, like typically people would give the example of the chair example, right? Instead of the
I saw that there's
plane.
images of chairs in this, so I think we'll get to the chair.
Okay, so we start off with the plane, and we're starting off more complex, and we're getting to the chair. Okay, cool.
Give him the chair. We as humans observe patterns and start to categorize them mentally.
Okay.
We do this automatically and naturally. Then we label those categories so we can communicate the pattern that we've observed and gain some utility from it. Go on.
I didn't say that. I didn't say
I know you
did.
I feel like we just shared an experience over a vast distance at the exact same time when I saw that happen.
Yeah.
That category
we'll
get to it. That category can be a bunch of different characteristics and ideas represented in one idea. That's what we call a concept, and conceptual ideas can exist on a spectrum. Gender is a concept and exists on a spectrum. Some people think the phrase "gender exists on a spectrum" is meant to be inclusive, but it is, I guess, in actuality, only true philosophically because of the concept itself. That means that one isn't either masculine or not masculine, but instead more or less masculine.
Okay.
I think I see what he's saying with this.
Yeah. I think that it's like
That
there's
last
a sentence.
That last sentence clarifies a lot, yeah.
Like if you took away everything except maybe one sentence or two within the paragraphs, then I think you find what he's saying.
There is no like true masculine.
Right.
There is only more or less masculine. That's a statement I don't think is inherently disagreeable. That's actually something you would see out of de Beauvoir.
So it seems like, for me, I mean, the big knee jerk that I get is when we start talking about the natural reality of systematizing things, identifying patterns, and then creating something that has utility from it. My question always with this is like whether or not there's actual, like, to what extent there is utility, or like if you mischaracterize a pattern, the extent to which that it becomes not useful or even like problematic, right? But like he hasn't really like said anything other than the fact that like gender is a spectrum as of yet. So I think
I would almost be inclined to ignore like the entirety of this except for the last sentence.
That's what I meant.
Just because like we're getting into like a weird psychology here where we humans observe patterns and start to categorize them mentally.
A lot of
massive claim here. I'm not sure, with all due respect to Tom, I'm not sure he understands how massive a claim that is. We do this automatically and naturally. I don't know what this is supposed to mean. Then we label those categories so we can communicate the pattern that we've observed and gain some utility from it. Let's leave out the gain some utility from it part entirely. That complicates things too much. Then we label those categories so we can communicate the pattern. We've moved from a natural part of how we sort of intuit the world to a social utilization of categories, and we're operating kind of a circular way where we label the categories, but the categorization will in some necessary sense be itself an act of labeling, and he doesn't distinguish between these. So I'm very perplexed by this, but I also don't think it matters because I think he feels the need to sort of start from first principles or something, and this is what this looks like to him, and I think he can just abandon this because he doesn't need this. We don't need we don't need a psychological history of mankind to get to an argument about gender necessarily. I mean we do at some level, but I don't think for our purposes here we need to bother with that part.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, kid? I just like seeing your
There's so much
face.
like there's so much like I feel like he's preparing something much like the way that gender exists on a spectrum has not really been identified. I mean, he said that there's a more or less masculine. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to play out with his argument. So there's so much in the air from this that I don't
Right.
want to
Okay,
go too
yeah.
far into it.
Okay.
I will continue then.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Gender is thought of on a spectrum from masculinity to femininity or vice versa. It exists on a straight line and bipolar spectrum with one pole at each edge of the line. One pole is the most feminine and the other the most masculine. This spectrum loosely represents prototype theory and I don't actually know this term, prototype theory. Prototype theory and is anybody familiar with this?
There's a link in the doc.
I don't want to click on the link in the doc. I don't know where this is going to go.
I already did.
I'm
it's
gonna,
safe-ish. Maybe he knows where I live now.
Okay, it's Aiko says it's safe-ish. Forgive me if I open this off screen quickly.
I have it on the screen.
Okay, fine.
I'll read it. Okay.
No.
Prototype theory is a model of graded categorization in cognitive science, where all members of a category do not have equal status. For example, chair is more prototypical of the concept of furniture than, say, lamp. Okay.
Okay, so it's
I see. Okay, so it's like
closer to chair. What?
So it's like the concept of a family resemblance, but with like sort of poles of intensity or something like that.
Closer to, I guess.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind. But, yeah.
Okay. I'm a chair. You can sit on it. Just kidding. Don't. Continue. Sorry. I think that's explaining enough.
Well, that's inappropriate. As I was saying, this spectrum loosely represents prototype theory and forms. These philosophical linguistic theories explain how we engage with concepts like gender. There's a prototype image in your head that is stationed at each pole, and each pole is stationed at the opposite edges of the spectrum line. Okay, good. Each prototype is the most stereotypical image possible of that concept. The more characteristics that are stereotypical, the closer on the spectrum they get to the prototype and the farther they get from the opposite pole. Meaning, the less characteristics of the opposite prototype. But it's not all a numbers game. You don't need X amount of masculinity to become a man, but instead fit the concept enough to be labeled as one. That's actually an interesting sentence.
There's something that's standing out to me as I think there's a big problem. I mean, let me know if you agree or not, because it's kind of complicated. But like, I think that there's a big problem with viewing the differences between femininity and masculinity as a linear spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's the case. I think we relate particular qualities to each, but I don't think that they're like actually like opposites of each other. I don't think that femininity is necessarily the opposite of masculinity. And we could take some like examples of this about like ways that like things can become more or less masculine without ever identifying any relationship to like femininity. I think that these are two different concepts that only because of like the sex binary that we interpret them as being like oppositional to each other. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case.
I think you're right, and I think this is getting back to him sort of preloading, not maliciously, just to be clear, Tom, if you're watching, sort of preloading the notion of womanhood as in some sense essentially corresponding to biological sex in particular, so that even when we're talking about gender as something social, we are nonetheless talking about it being a spectrum between a coalescence of woman as gender and biology at one end and man as gender and biology at the other end. And so the only part in the middle. That seems to be kind of what's going on here. He's insisting that when we talk about masculinity and femininity, we are talking about a scale of deviation from a line that is determined strictly by biology. So he's treating biology as gender and vice versa, which is pretty common. That's kind of the natural attitude, I think, generally.
Yeah, well, to be completely fair, like he's trying to outline how people see it, not necessarily like what it is. But I think that there's like I don't think that that necessarily follows. I don't think that they're like, if he is saying that this is how people see gender, then he is sort of talking about the way that gender exists
Yeah.
already. And if he's saying that gender exists necessarily as people see it, but I think it would follow from there that it necessarily exists on this like bipolar spectrum. And I don't think that that makes sense.
To his
Yeah.
credit, I do want to remind us as well that he begins in the beginning saying he thinks that both attitudes are incorrect. So he's not necessarily when he's describing the popular attitude or what he perceives as the popular
biological essentialist attitude versus the socially constructed attitude.
Yeah.
He's saying that it's a bit of both.
Yeah. So example, a chair is a concept. We can't give a strict definition of a chair because there are too many variations that wouldn't fit the definition but would still be considered chairs. So we use concepts to describe how our brains hold so many wildly different objects or ideas that exist independently yet come together to make a single picture in our heads. We associate them with a family of similar traits that align with a pattern. Imagine a chair, likely a wooden chair with 4 legs, a back, armrests, and it's made for one person to sit on. This is your prototypical chair. Excuse me, sorry. The prototype sits at the front of the polar spectrum. The less typical a chair becomes, the farther it gets from the prototype on the spectrum. Now imagine a gamer chair with 8 legs, wheels, spins around, reclines, has leather with stitching and bright colors. The gamer chair is very different from the prototype, but conceptually still exists close enough to the prototype to the point that we will still call it a chair. Your brain is noticing similar characteristics that associate with a family of characteristics. Eventually, we get into gray areas that can be argued whether or not an object can be categorized as a chair, or if it fits the concept when it has less and less characteristics of the prototype. That is the opposite edge of the spectrum, where things eventually get grayer and harder to categorize before they stop being categorized as chairs, and even bleed into other similar concepts like stools or benches or sofas.
May I just point out something that doesn't matter at all? Do you think that the first chair was like a rock? Or made of wood?
Well, actually, that's exactly what I immediately think of in this particular context, because that's actually an excellent example. When we talk about a chair, like maybe the assumption is because we typically illustrate chairs by reference to the most prevalent chair at a time when like common illustrations of these things would have been sort of popularized in our media. But typically what we're actually talking about is a relationship between a human body and an object such that it facilitates a certain resting position.
Yep.
We're not actually talking about any specific quality of the thing itself. We're talking about what you can do with it.
Well, I think that there's probably a distinction of, I don't want to go too far into the chair thing because it's kind of boring, but like I think that there's a distinction on whether or not it's made for that purpose.
Right, right.
If you find a rock that can be used as a chair, you're not going to point at that and be like, oh, that's a chair. But if you see a rock that was carved into a chair, you're going to say that is a chair, right?
Yep.
So it's almost like referring to like it's like a essential purpose.
Actually, yeah. Yeah.
I disagree a little bit.
Okay.
I disagree a little bit, mainly because I think what's happening when we point to like a wooden chair and we say that's a chair, we're calling that a chair because there's sort of an additional concept, which is the chair is sort of like a deliberately constructed artifact versus the chair as like a specific type of affordance in the world. So
affordance, and what do you mean by
sorry,
that?
I'm using Gibsonian language. So like a specific, how you kind of understand this is David Gibson has this theory of perception where he thinks of us as basically comprehending our environment by reference to affordances, things
like
that we can
things
do.
you can co-op,
buttons and levers, right?
Things that you can use.
The ability to sit.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yes. All right.
Exactly.
That's what I was checking. Yes.
Yeah.
Things that you can take to sit on, and things that you made to sit on.
Yeah. So case in point, if you're a part of like a camp of cavemen and you have been sitting on this rock and it's comfy, you really like this rock, and somebody has been sitting on your rock and you want to sit on your rock, you could say, "Get out of my chair," and that would make sense. Except you're a caveman, so it wouldn't. So the analogy kind of breaks down.
I get it. I think kid's gonna die. Yeah. I don't want it.
No. That's completely fine. Yeah, that's completely fine.
Yep.
All right.
Get the fuck out of my chair.
And here we have examples of chairs.
Yes, these are in fact chairs. I agree with that.
Oh my. Okay, I didn't scroll down.
That ball one looks awful, by the way. Like super uncomfortable on your back.
Someone said it's from Men in Black. Is that true?
What?
Yeah, I think it's from when they're. Remember the scene where they have to like do the written test, and they're all sitting in like these weird like ball chairs, and so Will Smith just pulls the coffee table just across the room, and just writes on it.
Yeah, I think that might be.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything distinct about this paragraph to gender as of yet, or is it just identifying that there is such a thing as like
Well,
social,
why don't we finish
concept?
the last couple of sentences, and
Oh,
then
sure,
we will see.
Yes.
So if gender is a spectrum from masculine to feminine, then what do those words mean? Each is a list of patterns / characteristics / traits that have become stereotypical of each sex. Well, there you go. A woman is a feminine adult human. Okay. Feminine is just let me finish. I know.
Okay.
I know. It's
I'm not
okay.
gonna say anything. I'm gonna let you
Yes.
guys say it. I don't need to say it.
I need to read it so we can
Yes.
say we went through
Please.
it before we call. Feminine is expected traits or traits likely of females. He's exhibiting exactly what Butler's talking about when she talks about sex itself as a gender. Female is the sex with XX chromosomes or the sex that creates larger gametes. Most females are women. That's an interesting sentence. And all women are feminine. But not all feminine people are females. If something stopped being likely of a female, it would cease to be feminine. But
My brain's
Muting
gonna pop. I
myself.
need you to. Okay, Sunday. I need you to rephrase this in a way that doesn't make my brain fucking pop.
give me a second. Sorry, this is what percentage is this? I'm sorry. Okay, let's Encyclopedia Brown this bitch. Feminine is expected traits or traits likely of females. Female is the sex with XX chromosomes or the sex that creates larger gametes.
Pause.
Yes.
I think this is an experiment that I did in college. It's not just humans that are categorized as masculine and feminine. Objects also are too. If you were to imagine a fork and a spoon in your head, you can determine. Most people would say that the fork is masculine and the spoon is feminine. This is not necessarily saying that the spoon is relates to this sexed category, but more so a deeper understanding of what the aesthetics of the concept of womanness would be, right? So like if you have like roundness, curvy, soft, and then if you have like a fork, you have something which is sharp, rigid, etc. Then people can really quickly come to a gendered understanding of these concepts. Similarly to like language and stuff like that. How many languages are gendered, but they have a really, really loose tie to like sex differences. So
you
like,
you articulated that sentence in the manner I would expect of someone that creates larger gametes.
okay.
One moment, we've lost the connection yet again.
Oh my god.
Because my OBS apparently operates in a similar fashion. Give it a second.
I appreciate what you said, kid. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I also appreciate that by implication you imagine yourself fucking your food, so that's great.
Yes. Yep.
All right.
The fork penetrates. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's
so does the
really kind of
spoon,
what
though.
it is, right? No, it
It's
doesn't.
designed to,
It
penetrate.
scoops.
The spoon is designed to carry, to uplift.
Ooh, true.
The knife is the gayest of the utensils because it just kind of like runs adjacent to whatever it is.
That's true.
But that is a good point.
You, Aiko, every
What?
single stream I do with you, like of every single person I interact with, I fear the interactions with you. These are the ones that will cancel me.
What? From what? I don't do anything.
Yeah, but doing nothing nonetheless, you managed to put me into like these profoundly dangerous situations.
Like what? Who's gonna
called his mom
cancel
a
you?
pedophile.
Oh, that's true.
You're not allowed to say that on Twitch.
Well, I meant Not your mom. She's here. Why would I call your mom a pedophile? That doesn't make
My
any
mom's
sense.
not here. You think I have these conversations with my mother? She doesn't even know I have a
She's
YouTube
in the
channel.
bath right now. Leave her alone. She's having a soak.
My mom wants to be so supportive of my channel. She keeps asking me what the name of my channel is, and I just ignore
Yeah,
her.
I'm the same way. I'm the exact same way.
I don't want her to come in chat and start like saying my name. It's like, oh, you're doing so good.
Oh my god,
just-
that would be so cute. That would be so cute.
She stalks me before on
Wait,
stream. but no
where's
one
wife?
remembers.
Becoming unbecoming if you are around.
She's watching this on the TV.
Okay. Tell Kid's mom. Just kidding. Don't do anything that would make him uncomfortable. Obviously, you're the wife. You know what? Never mind. Continue.
Roles.
For example, sorry, if something stopped being likely of a female, it would cease to be feminine. Now, here's
This is not a thing. This is made up. Just
well, that's
shenanigans.
my immediate reaction to when I read this. So Tom, listen, okay, think about this for a second. Feminine is expected traits or traits likely of females. These are two different sentences. Expected traits or traits likely of females. Now we've identified female strictly by reference to biological categories that, by the way, people who identified women for thousands of years did not have available to them because they didn't understand what chromosomes were, or what gametes were, or how ovaries worked, or anything. I think Aristotle thought that life was caused by fermenting in like the gut or something. Not 100 years ago, they thought sperm whales were filled with sperm. Literally.
Have you tried?
It's oil. It's not sperm.
No.
Did you say have you tried?
I mean, apparently
yes,
it's very
I did.
good. Apparently sperm whale steaks are delicious, but
okay,
whatever.
that's not what I meant. But anyway, Finster. Someone brought up Finster as an example of someone who is a man who is very feminine, but not female, and not identifying as a woman. Right.
That is true. So there's something about like it seems like there's this implication that like the further that you go along on the this bipolar spectrum, and again I don't agree that it's bipolar, but the more along the spectrum that you go, the more likely you are to be characterized as a male or a female in relation to that spectrum. But I don't, when it comes to like how everyday people understand gender, I think it sort of falls back more so on the biological composition and not necessarily like you can have like a finster or something, but if there's like a telltale sign of like the biological composition, people are going to completely erase the idea of woman, no matter how much of a woman that you are presenting as, and people will like default back to that biological composition.
Some people.
I think the idea of gender as sex, as it's seen like socially, and femininity and masculinity, I think these are two separate concepts, which it seems like he's trying to merge into one.
Right, and okay, maybe I just missed it, but it doesn't seem clear if he's describing like where is he getting this concept based off of, because this is
science.
So, well, yes, that for sure, the best science, but also like he's explaining it as if this is like a known understanding that is shared, but and saying that it's not his take. Is this his take or not his take?
It's not a prescription.
This is
well,
true.
yeah, but he's just saying that this is what it is. Or
hang on, no. He is saying this is what it is because he's saying what do these words mean. So this is not a description of other people's opinions at this point. This is his read on it as the objective truth. Now here's the immediate problem that I run into. So when he says feminine is expected traits or traits likely of females, we've immediately introduced a specifically cultural aspect here. So that feminine is determined entirely by culture. So for example, if there was a culture like an Amazonian one, where the women fought wars and they worked in the trades, and the men were at home baking pies and raising babies and whatnot, then the what we consider the masculine would be predicable of females and vice versa. So right off the bat, when we say most females are women, this is a sentence that he cannot justify because that is always going to be contingent on the perception of a particular cultural grouping somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's also just to make it a little bit more interesting. It's also a moving concept. It's also something that is constantly in flux. It's not something that you can just pin down, right? Like a really simple example is the like pink being seen as like a feminine color, and when like in previous times it's been seen as a masculine color. It's more like fiery, while like while blue is more of like a muted, calm color, which was seen as more like feminine. So like all of these things change over time. It's not even something that can be expected as traits of females either.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I must disclose. I must disclose this. I'm just here because I think it's super interesting to watch you two try to decode Tom. I'm very interested. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Okay, continue.
Did we even finish this? If something stops being likely of a female, it would cease to be feminine. Yeah, okay.
So finally, example, makeup is considered a feminine product because females are more likely to use it, thus becoming a stereotypical likely product for females. The immediate example that comes to my head that dispels this, high heel shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Originally a specifically male article of clothing. Is footwear clothing, or is that something? Is that like a? Yeah, it's clothing. We'll go with
It
that.
counts. Yes.
Yeah.
Close enough.
A specifically male article of clothing that like kings wore.
I think it's actually. I have a deeper take. I think it's still masculinized. Raising the height of women immediately has like we all know about like the
Power.
toxic masculinity of like if someone is with their wife or whatever and she's wearing high heels and now all of a sudden she's taller, then he becomes like emasculated. So
he's
like,
taller but also less mobile, right? So there's like an association of this wear not being associated with action and mobility. If and like you everyone here like seen the Resident Evil 2 remake?
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I have to check something real quick.
Okay. Well, she definitely hasn't. So Ada Wong, like independent spy character, whatever. In the remake, she wears high heels despite, you know, deliberately going into a sewer full of zombies, and your character has to rescue her and whatnot, stuff like that. Like it's associated with not being the first line of defense in a situation where action is demanded or something like that.
Oh wait, do we have a? Ooh, we got an image coming up. Okay.
We have an image. Oh, is there? Is
yeah,
a bad image?
Yeah.
Is this like? If I scroll down, am I gonna like lose monetization?
Save it. No spoilers. You're not gonna get demonetized. Okay, it's not dicks or anything.
Okay, I see Mike Wazowski. I'm not reading the Venn diagram. What is this? Is the rosé?
Rosé.
Is there on your left? Good.
Oh, propagate to my chat. You just made me want some rosé. I need to see if I have any.
Bunch of lightweights. This would have been whiskey if it was up to me. KidNotKin's chat. Hello. How are you all? Yeah, exactly, Brooks. So, high heels make your legs and makeup make you lithe and elegant. They don't make you taller as in more intimidating. They sort of emphasize your smoothness.
What smoothness?
KidNotkin is here drinking wine from a box.
Okay.
To the face?
Immediately talking shit. Okay.
I feel God, you're
Working class? Is that what you're gonna say? You're gonna say I was working class?
no, not at all.
Okay.
Wine from a box is not. No working class person would ever drink wine from a box. That's
What are they drinking from?
from a bottle, of course.
Or, actually, never mind. I'm not gonna. Never mind.
They drink cheap wine from a bottle.
Okay. Are you ready for the gender spectrum?
Wine from a box is like it's like a military thing.
It's cheap.
Or
yeah,
no.
it's cheap.
Or someone's aunt, right? That's how the kids do it these days. They talk about their aunts drinking box wine. I don't know. Okay, back to gender. That is,
Boy, my aunts
is
are
that a
lame by
okay?
comparison.
That is a gendered thing. I think that most people would assume
Box wine?
that box wine is.
I think box wine is like an alcoholic's thing.
Listen, President Sunday, you are not. You are not.
Jesus.
You are not allowed to judge the box wine. I will.
I fear no man. I am the only one who can judge the box wine. Is the box wine good?
No, it tastes like shit.
Oh, it's too bad. Some cheap wine is good. BC is full of cheap wine. It's actually pretty solid.
I'm straight edge. Still. Continuing on.
Okay, let's
You
look at
cannot
this.
escape. You cannot escape.
Yes, you can. So let's look at this image here. So gender, we have a scalar order that goes from 50s housewife to butch lesbian to this
Oh my
large open domain, the Hyrule field of gender, of non-binary, to flamboyant gay man to Hulk Hogan. Thank you, Kraft Ebing. Literally, though. So this is congratulations, Tom. You've actually hit on something rather historically interesting, in which the earliest interpretation of homosexuality was as a embodying of or a manifesting of the behaviors of the opposite sex. So Kraft Ebing, if anyone's not familiar, is an early psychologist who wrote a book called Psychopathia Sexualis, where he characterized what we would come to call trans people as an extreme degree of what he called inversion. So an invert is someone who is, say, a biological man, but who embodies the attitudes of women, which includes, for
God,
Kraft
that sounds
Ebing,
like a slur.
sexual
Can you say
attraction to women.
What
What's that?
sounds like
Can
a.
you say that? Invert sounds like a slur.
It does sound like a slur, doesn't it? I mean, psychopathia sexualis, right? Like he's describing it in deliberately like pathological terms.
Yeah.
So it functions as a slur, absolutely. It does sound like a slur. But like for example, let's say, anyone remember Ian Bernardo from American Idol?
Mm,
No.
mm-mm.
No? Okay, super flamboyant gay man. He's like, "Hi, I'm Ian." You know, that kind of like stereotypical, like hyper exaggerated kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's he wore like a chinchilla thing on his neck. So what Kraft Ebing would say is this is a person who is embodying the behavior of a woman. They are an invert. They're a man who is acting like a woman. If you're attracted to men, you're a man who's acting like a woman, because only women are attracted to men, of course. So he's pathologizing any kind of homosexuality where health is defined as identical with heterosexuality in this context. As you get more behaving like a man, you end up more like Hulk Hogan. This is like a very healthy, not inverted human being. A butch lesbian, by contrast, is a woman who acts like a man, is attracted to women like a man, supposedly. And a 50s housewife is, of course, the platonic ideal of a woman who acts like a woman and is attracted to men like women are.
Okay.
So
It seems like.
I would like to say how progressive it is that he made the masculine oval pink.
And how large he made it too.
no, he made the
how large
masculine
he made the
oval
non-binary
red. The
section.
feminine oval is pink.
It's not red.
Yeah, it's red.
The masculine one? Yeah, it is.
It's red. Okay, it doesn't look red.
No,
on mine.
hang on. It's pink on Aiko. What did you do? Why is it pink on your end?
I don't
Look at
know.
your screen. It's actually pink there. Did you invert the colors?
No.
Oh yeah, it's in dark mode, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in dark mode.
Oh,
Oh.
that's why.
Okay, I guess I take it back. Not progressive of you, Tom. Sorry. Rip.
Tom, what is this foolery?
Easy. Okay.
Okay,
So it looks like we're conflating. If we're talking about the way that people see gender, I don't know.
In the
why-
1800s.
What's that?
In the 1800s.
No. In the diagram, Hulk Hogan isn't there. But like, so sexuality is involved here, along with like biological composition, along with I don't know why it says non-binary. You shouldn't say like androgynous or something like that if he was trying to make this like bipolar argument.
It should be, but non-binary is in popular parlance right now. So I think he's
Gender fluid, is that more like?
Now here's the interesting thing. Non-binary for him means somewhere between a gay man and a lesbian.
So is it
somewhere between a gay
neutralized
man-
or amplified?
Well, somewhere between a gay man and a lesbian are like deer and dragons and whatnot.
I feel
So
like
it's
the
kinda
other thing
cool.
that like disappoints me a little bit is that if we engage with this as like this like bipolar understanding of gender, again, I don't think it's bipolar, but if we're doing that, then like any way that people like the example of the fork and the spoon that I brought up earlier, or like if you think of like a masculine car or a feminine car or whatever, like what do they look like in your head?
Yeah.
Just like masculine shapes, feminine shape, etc. Like the concept is so much like deeper than this, but it's really just reducing it down to like the most simplistic form possible, when it's like, if we're talking about the way that people perceive gender, people do perceive gender in this really complex way. People do perceive like they do see shapes and gender those shapes as well, which is something I wish we would be able to get into, but I guess this is content.
I think we can, as if to illustrate. Masculine is the exact color of Lightning McQueen. Okay, but okay. Well, let's read this paragraph. Maybe this will, I guess, several. Yeah. Oh my God, this is a long one. I'll tell you what. I'll read the next two paragraphs. Kid, I'm going to let you do the next one.
Okay.
All right. So gender includes gray areas. Concepts rarely have endpoints where an idea stops at a rigid barrier. Instead, they get fuzzier or grayer on the outer edges. This is an interesting sentence in light of this diagram, which shows them actually getting fuzzier in the middle. But okay. They get fuzzier or grayer at the outer edges. These are areas where it's harder to find a consensus as to whether or not an object fits the concept, because it has such a small amount of the prototype's characteristics, or at least not the most important ones, i.e. weighted characteristics. Sorry, I drank like an entire liter bottle of Perrier before, and that was a very unwise move when I'm on stream. On the gender spectrum, each gender is its own concept, and they are polar opposites of one another in a dichotomy. Meaning, getting farther from one also means you get closer to the other, and vice versa. If you are as far away as possible from both poles at the same time, you exist in the middle of the spectrum, called the twilight zone. We call this area non-binary / androgynous. This is where people with a fairly even mix of feminine and masculine traits will exist. These people can't easily be placed nor identify as only one gender within the binary. Anyone in this area doesn't live without gender, only a more mixed bag of gendered traits. Interesting. So he's just stop here very quickly. He's characterized the non-binary as that which pulls from both sides. So the non-binary is actually deliberately binary.
Yeah, so like you have an accumulation of characteristics, and each one of those characteristics are necessarily gendered on as feminine or masculine. It's only ever like a mix of these, and if like the accumulation of all of these different symbols make it hard to place like this overall like if all of the dots are closer to the middle, then you don't know where to put them, I guess. Which, if we're talking about the way that people see gender, I don't think that people see gender like that.
I think this is taking the natural attitude to gender, and this is coping with the fact of the presence of a large number of people who identify as quote-unquote non-binary, but still insisting, because not being able to escape the binary conceptually, of placing them along the binary. even though they're literally identifying as non-binary. So why would you put them on a scalar order that's binaristic? The reason non-binary, oh, sorry, here we go. They also don't defy the existence of the gender. Here we go. This is important. They also, non-binary people, don't defy the existence of the gender binary by representing a third gender, but instead are so much of both categories that they can't be labeled by only one. The reason non-binary isn't a separate gender is because there isn't a third category of sex traits detached from masculinity or femininity. Non-binary people still have masculine and feminine traits. Some may exist with a wider window within the spectrum than most, but they still exist on the spectrum because everyone has gendered characteristics. So because we insist on the gender binary, well, I mean that this sentence amounts to a bare insistence on the gender binary. Some may exist with a wider window within the spectrum than most, but they still exist on the spectrum because everyone has gendered characteristics, which is identified via spectrum, because I'm insisting that gender corresponds to biological sex. So yeah.
Yeah, this is like,
Tom, please, for the love of God, 15 pages of this. It will change your life.
I don't know about, but hey, good challenge. Sorry, go ahead.
so this seems like the ultimate conclusion. I like that you called it a cope, because I do think that it does kind of sound like a cope. Like when you start having concepts of non-binary, which I think is something which explicitly is outside of the binary, not like between, but like insisting that it's this bipolar spectrum. You have to fit it in there somehow, and I think it like if you want to have like this gender essentialist view of how gender is constructed, then you have to fit the androgynous in somewhere, and so placing it in between is how you're going to be able to do that. But like this seems like the ultimate conclusion to thinking of it as this bipolar spectrum, where like we know that that like yes, people will like treat gender as this binary, but the characteristics of like masculinity and femininity aren't actually opposites. And so when things exist outside of these like conceptual like symbols or what have you, you have to like fit them in somewhere, even though it doesn't actually make sense to do that, because they're not actually relating to a concept of masculinity or a concept of femininity. They're not actually relating to those concepts. So you just have to make this gray area in between and be like, it's somewhere in there. Then it's like, this is still under the assumption that like femininity is the like dialectical opposite of masculinity. And I think that's a categorical error.
Well, he's insisting that femininity is essentially ovarianness, which is which is a thesis. I'm going to be right back. You two entertain my audience. It's your turn now. With your box wine and your disturbing pissing on people animations.
Shut up. Aiko.
Yeah.
You had something to say. What do you think about this?
Okay. So I met Tom.
Is Tom a bigot? Is what I'm asking you.
No, I don't. I can't describe Tom. I just can't describe him. It's hard to do that. I met Tom on panels.
I'm joking, by the way. I don't think that he's a bigot.
No. I don't. Listen, I always felt like a little bit gaslit by him presenting things to me as if they were real sentences. But I'm just glad. I'm just glad that other people.
Okay, wait. What you just said was, I feel gaslit because sometimes he tells me things and pretends like they're actual sentences.
Yes. No, see, I'm serious though. Like they're not, like he'll say things as if they're real, but they're not like fundamental. It's like not even framed as an opinion. It's just like, and the face that I honestly, when you were what was it? When you were watching the laugh thing and saw the gender doc, I don't remember, but you made the face and I was like, that is how I always felt. So I just wanted to see you guys talk about it. And also you and President Prison Sunday have a date.
Yeah.
That is my goal, to see other people inspect Tom's takes and see your first date as your what do you call it? Chaperone. I'm the chaperone.
Oh, cool. I just noticed that Tom responded to President Sunday. After we finish this in timely
Let's
manner,
pull him on. You
yeah,
want
we'll
you up
pull
for
him on.
that?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, let's do
wait,
that.
Aiko, you down for that?
Yeah, can I on Twitch, or would I have to go on YouTube?
Is he banned?
He's banned from Twitch, yeah.
We
Okay.
could have him on audio only.
Is that okay?
I won't tell on you.
Or Aiko, how about this? We need to grow your YouTube channel anyways. Why don't you switch to YouTube then?
Should we?
Aiko's YouTube is popping off right now.
It's actually she's been
kinda-
doing really well. Like I think you've been averaging like 150 viewers.
Sundays
which for a
and
1,000 sub channel
Tuesdays.
is crazy.
1735. Yay.
Yeah, considering your 17, wow, you went up 700 subs. Damn.
That was a
like-
while ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I remember when you were struggling to break like 900. This is crazy. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's because of people like you and the commentary people. Really,
I'm just remember that, Aiko. I made you. Okay, when you hit like 100K, I made you. That was all me.
I'll put your. I'll Oh wait, I actually have you seen kids like background, or what do you call it, backdrop, and the
It's right here.
yeah,
You see
the little octopus squid thing. Have you seen the
I told him
memorials?
Oh, you have a bigger octopus?
It's on the
Look,
couch.
it's not.
I have a reference to you in my stream. I think I told you about this.
A couple.
I remember this vaguely.
On the couch in my background, you might be able to see it if I'm full screen or something. There's the same octopus thing. You know those octopus things that you can flip inside and outside.
Mm-hmm.
You have it on your shelf probably behind you.
Yeah, Squiddleton identifies as a squid. Actually, you fucking bigot.
Okay, well there is a biological reality. Never mind. Yeah, no, I put that in my room after the Wicked Supreme thing when you got drunk and put the squid on your head. I thought that was adorable, so I put it in my room.
He thinks I got drunk for the Wicked Supreme thing. That's cute.
Wait, what does that mean? You were
Got drunk
you
for
drank
it?
a whole bottle, and yeah. What are you talking about?
I fill my whiskey bottle with Coke.
What kind of Coke?
I
that
thought
was a
You
wine
said a
bottle
wine
to Wicked
bottle,
Supreme
but maybe... yeah, I was wrong.
Oh no, that was a real wine bottle, but I was sharing that with other people.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm a very
He was
very
just
high,
mean.
I'm very high functioning when I'm tipsy.
Okay. Based.
Unfortunately, yeah, I basically lack the ability to get drunk. It just makes me not nervous. So.
That's what you said about weed. I'm just saying.
Weed does nothing to me.
You
just
said
makes me
the
sleep.
edible. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
it does nothing. It gives me a dry mouth. It makes me super lethargic, but it does nothing else to me.
Okay, well, I guess I'll have to keep searching ways to properly
Apparently,
drug.
yeah.
Properly drug Sunday.
I'm just built differently. I don't know what to tell you. I'm just superior. I'm more evolved.
Is it the masculine or the feminine in you?
It's both.
Both? Okay.
I have combined both. I am a god.
Fair. True.
What size are the gametes?
What size are the gametes?
What are gametes? I don't even know.
Every size.
I don't know what
size.
a gamete is. It sounds familiar, but I learned creationism. Listen, everything is made of Jesus, the Holy Spirit.
A gamete, a reproductive cell having the haploid number of chromosomes, especially a mature sperm or egg capable of fusing with a gamete of the opposite sex to reproduce a zygote.
Oh, sperm and egg?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Also,
did you notice how Kid was reading off like a definition somewhere, which implies that he didn't know that?
It's because I don't know what a fucking gamete is.
He didn't know what a gamete was?
No, dude. I got.
God, you virginal Twitch users. Okay, let's move on.
Listen, I know Duluth, and that's it. Okay.
Apparently.
Okay. Did you have any...
gametes? Is that like the solar beams in Judge Schreiber's anus? Is that what? All people have a mixture of feminine and masculine traits / characteristics. These can be things like clothes, jawline, muscle size, jewelry, body language, speech patterns, personality, aggression, career, car, colors, interests, hobbies, the way you walk, personality, or I jumped on the line, eye contact. Okay, everyone make eye contact quickly. Let's see which of us is the most. Let's see which of us is. Let's separate the women from the men. Stare into your cameras. Facial hair, toys.
What kind of toys?
That could be many different things.
Because you can use toys in a variety of ways.
Yes, you can. Thank you. Okay, go on.
Video games. That probably actually corresponds now because I can't for the life of me get Aiko to play Alien Isolation, as amusing as that would be.
I only play
KidNotKin,
games with
do you
I'm
agree?
really important.
It's femoid. Yeah, I agree. If that's what you said. You said it's because you're a woman? Probably, yeah.
Empathy and body hair. The list goes on.
Wait, didn't he already say hair? Oh, facial
Yeah, but
and body. Okay, your face isn't your body, okay, President Sunday?
Yeah, but I hate facial hair. Like, I can't stand it. It drives me insane. I get, like, little dysphoria about my facial hair. The list goes on so long that we may never be able to list all observable traits that we use to gender someone, and these traits are ever-changing. Each of those traits on their own will be judged on the spectrum by themselves based on the likelihood to be a trait of the prototype, but all come together to create an overall image in your head, and that image will be gendered. Our brains do this almost instantaneously for every person that enters our field of vision. We'll categorize their gender, race, hair color, height, and a million other things without a thought. This is because our brains hold patterns and immediately match them to the overall image being observed. Some characteristics are weighted as more important over others, like a beard or a dress, and will influence the overall concept more so than body language or speech patterns. A person who doesn't have black skin or a wide nose or an afro and doesn't look black at all may still be categorized as black if both parents are categorized as black.
Okay.
Tom. This is because lineage.
Stop.
I'm sorry.
Listen.
This is because lineage is weighted as more important within the concept than some other. I'm sorry, Tom. Some other characters.
Okay, does Kid have to read?
Yes, go. Your turn.
Wait, you finished it. You finished it.
I finished the paragraph. Yes.
This is because lineage is weighted more important within the concept than other characteristics and traits.
Wait, where the fuck? Wait, you finished the paragraph?
What? Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
paragraph. Yeah.
Wait, what pages are we on?
I didn't
Am I
notice any
crazy?
problem.
Oh, we're on page 5. Oh,
Oh,
God.
okay. I stopped looking at the page because I was trying to process the words that were being spoken. So, I skipped a paragraph? No, I didn't. Did I? No. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, here we are. Continue. Challenge. Read without laughing challenge.
Did you have anything to say for this paragraph?
For this paragraph, this is normally what I would say. Tom, you can't say it like that. That's what I used to say. Tom, you can't say it like that. That doesn't do. Okay. So, yeah.
Wait.
I'm just observing.
We can dive into this sentence pretty far.
Okay, let's do it.
If we want to. I don't know how much this is going to
Let's do it.
I'm a little bit hesitant to because I want to engage Tom productively and
okay,
I don't want to just bully him.
Yeah, true.
That's why I'm not saying
I feel like we've already dipped into that enough here.
Okay, Tom, delete this example, okay?
Tom, yeah, but
find a different one.
I without explaining why, just I mean this as kindly as possible. For the love of God, pick something else, please. Okay.
I'll give you one example, okay? If someone doesn't have black skin, but they have a wide nose. They have white skin, no afro, but they have a wide nose. Tom, are they black? Okay, we can move on. Okay. I'm
sorry.
reading now, right?
Thank you.
I can keep going if you'd rather not.
I want to see if
I
Kid
can't.
can do it without laughing. Can
All right,
Read
let's
that
see.
line.
No, the next paragraph.
continue just
Okay, we'll see if
including that line. I
We'll
think.
see if anything funny is in there. Whether we're looking at gender expression or gender identity, both of these will be categorized by femininity and masculinity on the same gender spectrum. 1B.
1B. What's 1B? Is that
That's
this
the
thing?
gender spectrum.
But there's not a. It's not. Oh, I see. It's on the previous page. I see. Okay.
Yeah. The biological creates the identity which drives the expression. One's outer gender expression will represent all three of these and then can be observed and categorized by people around them based on their relativity to the prototype. If one's outer gender expression doesn't match their gender identity...
Oh, I'm sorry. I just got a raid from Stardust. Hey, Stardust, thank you for the raid. I'm with KidNotKin and President Sunday. Right now, we're going over tomfooleries, gender doc, and it's we're very serious. Thank you, Kuchman, for 18 months. Very pog. Everyone, thank you. Go follow Stardust. Or else. Okay.
Chat, you're making me look bad here. Let's see some subs and super chats. Come on.
Guys, listen, you can give bits, you can give subs, you can do all of that shit. I'm just not going to say your name out loud. Is it really that big of a deal if I say your name out loud?
It is. Say my name.
I will subscribe to President Sunday, and your name will be spoken with gusto.
That sounds like a threat or a...
It's kinky.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say.
I'm threatening your respective audiences with a better time.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
If one's outer gender expression doesn't match their... Wait, is that where I was? One's gender expression will represent all three of these and then can be observed and categorized by people around them based on their relativity to the prototype. If one's outer gender expression doesn't match their gender identity, they should either transition...
What?
They either should transition, they are defying their internal identity, or they're confused as to
Okay.
Okay,
hold up.
is...
Hold up. Hold
no,
up.
wait, let Kid...
Stop this train. No. This train needs to stop here, okay? Look. So, hang on. We need to focus on this for 5 seconds.
Okay.
So, one's outer gender expression will represent all three of these. One's outer gender expression will represent all three of these and then can be observed and categorized by people around them based on their relativity to the prototype. If one's outer gender expression doesn't match their gender identity, they either should transition, accept that their gender identity is vis-a-vis the prototype. So, what is transition in what respect? What does that mean in this case?
PP, no PP.
This confuses the fuck out of me because when we're talking about gender, sorry, TTS.
And a fraud. Those look black at all. May still be categorized black if both parents are categorized as black.
Okay, cool.
Wait, who's...
This is my TTS. I can't turn it off.
Okay. The only thing I heard is black categorized as black, but okay.
They're saying that you don't have to have black skin to be categorized as black because because people can fit other...
Was that Tom?
No, it's
okay. Okay.
Sorry, one's gender expression will represent all three of it. So like if we're talking about gender identity as something which is like, if we're talking about gender as something which is like reflective of this like biological composition, and then we're talking about, so like the identity, and then you have the expression, but the expression is just what you want to put out. The expression of your gender is just something that you want to show people. You want to
Yeah.
express something about yourself, right? Like that's the point. Like if like even insofar as like I tell someone that I am a man, I'm communicating something very, very specific, even though they might have a different interpretation of manness. But as it fits within that paradigm, I'm expressing something to you. Whereas like if you have a gender identity, like it doesn't really need to match the gender expression. Like if I don't feel like manness means very much to me, but when I express that I'm a man to you, I'm expressing something very particular about like the way that I was raised or whatever, right? So these things don't all have to line up. And it's just
Well, in the second sentence, he says the biological creates the identity which drives the expression. But if that's true, how would you ever get a situation where one's outer gender expression doesn't match their gender identity?
yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
Kid, please continue.
If okay, I'm starting from here. If one's outer gender expression doesn't match their gender identity, they either should transition, they're defying their internal identity, or they're confused as to what that identity is and how to express it. The word ident means in close relation to, and identity is one categorizing themselves in relation to a pattern and others in that category. They're saying that they are in close relation to others in that same category. The only utility in self-identification is being able to communicate information to others. If your self-identification does not align with how most others would categorize you, then your identity has lost utility. Is a really bad argument. Is a really bad argument.
If your self-identification does not align with how most others would categorize you, then your identity has lost all utility.
That's a ridiculous statement. You are okay. Your internal identity. Okay, your identity, your inside. No one can tell you what that is. You don't like exist for the purpose of other people. It's just a thing that things.
So okay, go ahead, Sunday. I have a lot to say. But...
Sure. So there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, he's implying right at the outset, without argument, that identification is in some sense validated by utility, which does not follow. Identity doesn't have utility. Identity is one of those things that's sort of associated with the things which are would be the subjects of utility, like the things that find utility in things. If your self-identification doesn't align with how most others would categorize you, then your identity has lost their utility. I think if your self-identification is incommunicable to people in like a certain social sphere, so like if you told someone, I'm not a man, I'm a zebra, then that statement would have zero utility. But if
I disagree.
I think I disagree, and this is why, right? So like, if you have someone that like doesn't understand what you are,
Yes.
you're still expressing something about yourself, right? You're still expressing that there's something about yourself which doesn't align with the way that they would otherwise categorize you. That's still, you can see that as a utility, right? If you don't want people to be like to have like a firm understanding of like what gender means to you.
No, I agree with that. But here's But what you're talking about then is you're augmenting then like the locution. So the locution itself.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So the locution not clarified or elaborated upon has low utility because you're using that presumably to communicate something and it's failing to communicate anything by itself.
So so if you have like particular genders or whatever that like people don't know how to associate anything, you at the very least have to understand that like they don't have an association to that symbol, right? For it to actually like say something expressive about yourself, who you are, etc. In the same way that I say that like I'm a man because I'm expressing something to you about my upbringing, my history, etc. Because it helps you understand who I am as a person. If you have someone that doesn't understand gender outside of this like binary categorization of sex characteristics, and then you have someone that presents as a man and then says, I am a woman, then you still are expressing something very particular about yourself, which they're going, like, yes, they're going to have to wrestle with it. They're going to have to like come to terms with it. But like, there's enough information there for them to start working out something that you're expressing. And if there is something that you're expressing that they can grapple with or understand, then that serves a lot of utility for you. So like if your self-identification does not align with how most others would categorize you, then your identity has lost all utility. This is just factually not true.
I agree with this. Yeah, that's fair. I agree with that. But moreover, like, let's leave that aside. We're talking about like the expression of identity here. The idea that the self-identification requires utility, I think, is an assumption that's sort of baked into this that stands in need of justification. I don't think you can justify it. I think your identity, once again, is one of those things that's more associated with the thing that makes things have utility, not the kind of thing that requires utility itself. It's like saying, it's like asking, like, what's the utility, KidNotKin, of you being alive? Like,
Yeah. Why are
this
you?
is why I hate utility arguments.
Yeah. It's like self, especially including self in this in identity, self-identity. Like you can have identification, like you get like a state ID or something like that, and that's not an expression of you. That's like for categorizing or keeping track of you or whatever it is. But yeah, so saying self is extra.
Yeah, I mean,
bad.
especially with concepts like identity. So like the problem for I see some people don't quite understand, but like the problem is there seems to be this, and I might be jumping a little bit, I might be assuming a little bit, but like as he said before, that like humans have this process of naturally categorizing things by perceived patterns, and then using that to communicate those patterns in order to gain some utility out of it. And I feel like it's drawing from this same like axiom, where it's like, for me, is that there you run into an abundance of issues when you start reducing things down to a specific essence or identity. You start running into a lot of problems that result from this like categorization or labeling or whatever, and then you lose all of the tools that you would otherwise have in understanding like what you are as a person, who you are, what makes like what determines like your way of being, right? You now have no way to discuss this outside of like this gender bipolar system, right? Like you must use this gender bipolar system to understand anything about yourself at this point. And he's calling this utility, but his like the way that he is attached to this bipolar system has made it where it seems like it's unable to actually like deal with the complexity of gender. I think that this is fundamentally a problem of like thinking that there's like genuine utility in defining patterns as identities, and not actually being able to conceptualize what's actually happening. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes. And by the way, once again, Tom, if you're watching, we've been having a bit of fun at your expense, but what I'm reading here is not stupidity, just a general lack of engagement with a lot of material here that would clarify this really fast. I would recommend you avail yourself of it. I can make recommendations. I'm certain Tom can make recommendations, and I'm certain Nico can make recommendations. So
I tried already.
Okay. Well, I'm sure I will.
No, I mean, I think a conversation with two of the two of you independently together, etc. I think that would be way better than pointing him to a book.
I don't have one. Mm-hmm. As long as we finish this in a timely manner, then yeah.
True.
We're a third of the way through page 5 of 10.
Okay, we can go unless there's something.
We're about halfway.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Lasting.
Yeah.
A person with dysphoria will almost always express their gender fairly rigidly and in accordance with the prototype or as close as possible. In practice, we will normally adhere to one stated identity unless we've decided that they are too far outside of the bounds. If someone tells me that they're a Patriots fan, I will likely take their word for it. Then if I walk into their house and they have a bunch of posters on their wall that say "Go Seahawks" or "Patriots suck," I will no longer believe that they're a Patriots fan. Just as I will not believe Hulk Hogan if he tells me that he identifies as a woman without any effort. Without any effort. If he identifies as a woman, he would adhere to the idea of womanhood in some sense that is observable to the people around him by being feminine.
Okay, no. I mean, I know what he's saying, but he's wrong, and that's also pretty convoluted. So, yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here in this short sentence. The first is a person with dysphoria will almost always express their gender fairly rigidly and in accordance with the prototype or as close as possible. There's a lot that's going on here when we're talking about the social behaviors of a person with extreme dysphoria. For example, when they express their gender fairly rigidly and in accordance with quote-unquote the prototype as close as possible, is that because that's the most accurate representation of themselves and their preferences, or is that because they're trying to ameliorate the tendency of society to treat them in a specific way based upon them not meeting a certain extreme? Or especially like if you're a trans man and you happen to be in the unfortunate situation of being a trans man with a highly feminine body. Maybe you have like a very large chest, very wide hips, and it becomes like
Front meat.
very... What's that?
Front meat, as I'm Really Important would say.
Lovely. So you have like a bunch of you have a bunch of external signifiers that tell people who sort of think about this in like in a naive and kind of reductive way, woman, right? Then you might take stronger measures to signal that you are not a woman than someone who doesn't have to deal with that. Someone who has like a completely flat chest, say, who doesn't have to like take those steps because there are certain things they just flat out don't have to worry about as a consequence of that. That can affect this. But we don't even need to go. We don't even need to refute this that strongly, because as soon as he introduces "will almost always," this is a judgment about a tendency. This is not a universal fact. This is not determinative of anything.
Oh, also sources.
It also seems a little bit like begging the question, where it's like saying that it's this tendency. Well, it's like, well, why is that? It's because of the gender the way that they identify their gender is going to be related to the concept of this like biological makeup. So like the problem here is that if you have what was the example? Hulk Hogan, was it Hulk Hogan? Where is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just not believe Hulk Hogan if he tells me he identifies as a woman without any effort. The problem is, in the same sense of the utility problem that was from above, where if like Hulk Hogan is telling you that she identifies as a woman, then she is expressing something to you which tells you about her identity that's
True.
very, very particular, and that is going to inform you about the way that they exist and the way that they understand their own being in this world, right? So like there is still utility, it is still telling you something. You just don't believe that. I mean, you might think that they're lying, I guess, but I can't imagine that's the argument.
It seems like that is an argument in discourse purgatory. Like, what if they're lying? I don't like people lie about all different kinds of things. It really doesn't matter. And what's the result of lying about your gender? It just doesn't.
Well, I mean, with the example with the Patriots fan, right? Like the person that says that they're a Patriots fan, but you go in their house and they have like posters on the wall that say "Patriots suck." Like you know that they lied to you. You know that they lied to you, right?
In one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah. But like the example of Hulk Hogan telling you that she identifies as a woman, that is actually expressing something very particular about how that person exists in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, here's an excellent counterexample. Like, let's say you have a trans man, right? When we're talking about like Hulk Hogan hasn't taken any efforts. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that Hulk Hogan hasn't had like bottom surgery? Maybe Hulk Hogan wants to have children. This is like one of the dilemmas that a lot of trans people are in, is there are like and until fairly recently it was actually required in many places that you actually have sterilizing surgeries in that order before you have other things as a condition of fully medically transitioning. There are aspects of life that are complicated by taking certain measures to transition, among others. Trans men in certain parts of the states, if you can't pass really, really well, that can hinder your quality of life in a very grave way.
Yeah.
Same with trans women. I'm given to understand like a little bit less so for again reasons why like someone like Boots will be sort of like have a pitying attitude towards trans men as opposed to trans women. Or for example, like if you're a trans man or a trans woman who wants to reproduce at some point, you may be actually required in order to pursue like the full range of options that would allow you to like present more effectively as the correct gender. You may be required to sterilize yourself. Well, if you value having like children who are biologically related to you, that's really important to you, and there are people for whom this is the case. You will not avail yourself of those services because they are not available to you with your life goals. Are they therefore not trans because they've made these pragmatic decisions trying to navigate like what's specifically on offer medically? That does not follow logically at all.
Like what would Hulk Hogan, the extent to which Hulk Hogan would have to go through putting in effort, as he says, the extent that Hulk Hogan would have to, the amount of effort that he would have to put in, it's going to be way more than basically anyone who's not Hulk Hogan, right? Like Hulk Hogan is like, as he says, I mean, from his theory, he is like the stereotypical ideal of masculinity, or not ideal, but
the very masculine,
platonic form of masculinity, right? So like, what would Hulk Hogan have to do if like you personally are still not able to see this person as a woman, right? Like even if Hulk Hogan puts on a dress, like you'll have people that is like, okay, this is a man in a dress, right? Even if Hulk Hogan, like there's it's hard to say just how much Hulk Hogan would have to do to actually be like considered a man from the public, or considered a woman from the public eye.
right? And self-identity having to be determined by the public consensus doesn't exactly work.
Well, here's a question for tomfoolery. I can't speak for Tom, but I haven't seen Vin Diesel's junk. If Vin Diesel secretly had a vagina this entire time, would he therefore be less of a man?
Only if you find out. Is it like Schrodinger's penis?
But I mean, in all seriousness, like, you will not believe Hulk Hogan if he tells you he identifies as a woman without any effort. But what if a woman has, like let's just operate within like a gender essentialist mode for a second. What if a woman has some kind of hormonal disorder that causes her to look exactly like Hulk Hogan? There are cis women who have like hormonal imbalances or just like general like genetic dispositions towards appearing in a certain way.
Beards.
Yeah,
Straight up.
Cis,
you have to like wax your face, laser,
things like that. Yeah.
People pay a lot of money to laser their face hair off.
Or who's that muscular woman in all of those YouTube shorts that all the right wing YouTubers get really upset about?
Didn't she just do a stream with Hassan?
Lucky bastard. But like, no, but case in point though, like she has arms that are built better than your average cis man. Well, she is, to my knowledge, a cis woman. No, so. Am I wrong about that? Actually, I probably shouldn't assume. But like case in point though, I think we're all in agreement about this.
We can move on to the next one. There are people who believe that we should abolish gender. Ooh, this ideology revolves around the idea that all of gender is socially constructed and arbitrary. They believe gender was pushed by men and the patriarchy to oppress women. All categories are socially constructed to some extent because we are choosing to draw lines on what does and does not fit into that category, just as all words at some point were made up and are therefore socially constructed. A category is only useful as long as we can label it and then communicate it. As long as we can label and communicate it. Categories, labels, and patterns are not found in nature and must be constructed, but they usually attach to some normative reality. A woman is feminine by nature, and the femininity can be observed. Unless these same people believe everyone is going to become one gender or non-binary, these patterns will still exist and therefore will still be observed and categorized naturally, which means that there is reason, purpose, and utility to the concept of gender, meaning gender is not arbitrary.
He's put his finger on something with that last sentence. He's so close. Unless these same people believe everyone is going to become one gender or non-binary, these patterns will still exist and therefore will still be observed and categorized. He's actually putting his finger on something very real, but I think he just completely misunderstands it.
I mean, with the initial statement that there are people who believe that we should abolish gender.
Yes.
This ideology revolves around the idea that all gender is socially constructed and arbitrary. The arbitrary point is not true. They believe gender was pushed by men and the patriarchy to oppress women. This is just definitionally untrue, because men are people that are gendered as men. So like you have people that are already gendered that are oppressing people by inventing gender. That doesn't.
Well, here's the thing though. It can be pushed to oppress women and also still oppress men, right?
True.
Like it's like the Umbrella Labs being overtaken by the same zombies.
I think
You're
that,
being charitable to
gender
nonsense president someday.
Gender abolitionism would make the case, as far as I understand it, would make the case that patriarchy is a result of a gendered society. That gender is like a categorical error.
Well, I would say they would probably say they're co-evil.
Wait, what was the
So you
rest?
have-
I'm sorry. Wait, what was the last word that Kid said? Hold on, I didn't understand. Hold on. What did you say, Kid?
I'm saying TLDR, generally, people that are gender abolitionists would believe that the concept of gender itself is inherently oppressive, and the creation of gender as a concept, whether it happened naturally or otherwise, created the system of patriarchy. That gender came first, and then you have the patriarchy, which oppresses people and creates gendered roles. I would assume that's what a gender abolitionist would think.
Not exactly. So I think what would probably be more correct is that the emergence of gender is itself the crystallization of an act of oppression. There are various theories about how this came about. So, for example, Lewis Mumford in his book *The City and Man* conjectures, I think spuriously but interestingly, that originally the distinction, still rooted in biological sex differences for him, was that people with dangly bits and therefore with an incapacity to bear children in that period in time would go out hunting, and as a result they would be armed and they would be mobile, and the others would be dependent on them for food, and therefore they oppressed the people who stayed home and dealt with agriculture and things like that, and therefore gender reflects a relationship of oppression from like a certain class of people who act in the world in a particular kind of way over those who act in a different kind of way with respect to their societies, things like that. That's one example of a theory that accounts for these things as being completely coeval. I see Brooks in the chat who is really angrily saying this is not what I believe, but I don't know what he is responding to. So if you could clarify, Brooks, that would be super helpful. Oh, and suddenly I'm listening to him. Okay, I guess I'm hitting on something. Jesus Christ. Anyways. Fuck. Okay. Anyway, the point though is that it's not like a sequence of linear time wherein gender is created and then patriarchy forms out of gender, or patriarchy is created and that institutes gender. These things come about simultaneously. A change in how we associate with each other has taken place, and then that sort of spirals out from there.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Abuse of power. People will find different powers to weaponize. Okay, continue.
Anything else on this section?
Okay, so unless these, so here's where he's kind of put his finger on something kind of interesting. Unless these same people believe everyone is going to become one gender or non-binary, these patterns will still exist. That's true, but the question is why? Why will these patterns still exist? Will the patterns still exist because there's something essential about having particular kinds of organs and manifesting particular tendencies to certain social roles or responsibilities or attitudes or dress or things like that? Or is it because it's the result of people insisting as like a common sense notion that if you have these organs, you do and dress and behave in X, Y, and Z fashion, and if you have these organs, it's A, B, and C fashion. That is, I think, what a gender abolitionist would argue. And a gender abolitionist wouldn't necessarily argue against the idea of gender categorically. They would be wanting to abolish, I guess you could say, sort of like gender categories that have been determined to have been established dishonorably.
Yeah, it's a consent issue.
Well, sort of. Like, I think that the issue isn't so much that they're non-consensual, but that they're the result of sort of like contingent historical factors that sort of entrenched attitudes that are passed on through like culturally coercive ways, but that aren't themselves necessarily honest representations of how people actually are. But nonetheless, how people actually are might still be categorizable in some meaningful ways. So, for example, one of the real perversities of gender restrictions to the military is that you bar people with certain physical features, breasts, ovaries, etc., from fighting, even though they may be very suited for it, may be very passionate about whatever cause is being fought for. And by the same token, you might be conscripting people who have the exact attitudes and dispositions and feelings and psychologies, etc., that are associated with the quote-unquote softer sex or something like that. And you're putting them into the meat grinder of a battlefield just because they got a dangly bit between their legs. That's perverse.
Dangly. Sorry.
Some cis women have too, to be fair.
There are lots of things that dangle, okay?
They can swing too. Nothing.
No, what did you say?
I said
say it again.
Swing too.
Oh, true. Okay, true, fair. Yeah. True and fair.
Okay, next.
I will read.
I got it. Cool.
So there are people. Okay, no, that's the phrase. That's the one we were just looking at. All people will not become one gender or non-binary. Well, not with that attitude, Tom. Our brains have differences based on our sex. I disagree. I think our sex has differences based on one's brain.
Are we doing the okay? We're doing the gendered brain shit. Okay. Okay.
There's studies link that.
I already have a lot to say. Well, okay, we'll
see.
Okay,
do you want to do it, or do you want to?
Okay.
Okay.
One's brain construction, brain size, brain waves. By the way, oh god, that's such a kettle of fish right there. Brain waves. Do you okay? Here's look up how fMRIs actually work, Tom, and then come back, because believe it or not, we haven't actually developed a device that senses brain waves. Brain stimulation change based on sex and then seem to affect how feminine or masculine one is in their identity and expression. Even testosterone and estrogen will affect the brain. Actually, there's a great paper called Are fMRIs Photographs of the Brain? Look that up. It's really good. Even testosterone and estrogen will affect the brain and then one's gender expression, which is curious because one takes testosterone and estrogen to express one's gender, but I digress. At one point, we thought it was all socially constructed and the best... That's not true. Oh, you got it a little bit backwards there, Tom.
Yeah.
At one point, we thought it was all socially constructed, and the best science we had at the time agreed by telling us children were socialized into gender norms by the age of 2.
That's not even what people say. People say it starts at the age of 2 when you start gendering your children differently. Largely when it comes to like emotional management and stuff.
This means gendered preferences were likely pushed on children by their parents and society around them. But then we got data even earlier in a child's life, and we now have studies that show children in the first year of their life will already choose different toys based on sex. Boys are.
What kind of toys are we
No,
buying
no, hang
children
on, hang
these
on.
days?
Wait.
We'll get to
Before
it.
the, before
I've
the,
studied this, okay? I
wait.
have a lot to say.
wait, but just the dumb counter, okay, right before we continue. Before the age of 2, they choose different toys, but how did you determine this? Did they interview them? They're below the age of 2.
We can get into it.
Yes.
I've read this study before. I've read other studies as well. We'll get
Okay.
into it.
Do it.
Boys are more likely to pick red fire trucks, and girls will pick pink Barbie dolls without ever having gendered toys forced on them in the past. Once thought to be due to marketing, something rather, once thought to be due to marketing is now known to be biological. The marketing only works because we are biologically drawn to certain things due to our sex. The difference becomes stereo space typical of that sex, and you need an editor here, Tom. Therefore gendered. These decisions from the infants are evidence of underlying biological factors in the brain that turn into interests and actions later on in life as adults. We also have evidence from within the first 6 months that show baby girl brains are more stimulated by looking in their parents' eyes, by touch and human interactions. Soft textures, and they were more likely to be affected by the emotions of the people around them.
Baby
This
boys have
research-
no feelings. That's why you have to beat them. Soften them up with a meat tenderizer.
Yep.
This research stays consistent later in life when women are more likely to request off for birthdays. Are more I don't recall Aiko asking for off for her birthday. Off. Where the fuck was I? God, I lost. Hang on. We also have evidence. When women are more likely to request off for birthdays, are more emotional, empathetic, and live more well-rounded lives, prioritizing relationships over things like careers. I can't imagine any other reasons for why they might do this. Boy brains are more likely to be stimulated by actions, fast-moving objects, were less likely to look at eyes, and more likely to squint into the sun with a stoic glare, and more likely to look at moving hands and enjoy watching / participating in rough housing. This brain stimulation turns into interests later in life, like watching sports or being more physical / aggressive and being more protective. Differences between men and women are driven by biology and are not only socially constructed. We have evidence of these differences going all the way back to hunter-gatherer humans, where alpha males No, Tom, no. Where alpha males protected their... Actually, quite the opposite. Where alpha males protected their families and women cared for children, just as most mammals have different biological roles between the male and female. You mean like spiders, where the female is a fucking giant Hulk that eats the male? Sure.
Okay. So,
Okay.
real
Sorry.
quick.
Oh, mammals. Okay, not spiders.
Real quick. There are lots of studies on children, or not just children, but like right after a child is born, even within the first day. This is not using studies of people born within the first day, and there's already implications there of why those studies are not going to be as conducive. But there are studies of after being born within the first day. Within the first 24 hours, they've done studies on the way that little girls and little boys will respond to particular types of images, not just toys within this example. But the problem is, when we're talking about scientific studies, what's really, really, really important is whether or not these can be replicated. As of yet, none of these studies have been able to be replicated, and we don't actually have a firm understanding of the extent to which things like testosterone and estrogen is going to impact a baby's brain prenatally, right?
Moreover, just to add to that as well,
Mhm.
this is something that they'll teach you in Sociology 101. Correlation does not equal causation. So even if these studies can be replicated, the bare fact that it seems to be the case that babies with penises and babies with vaginas gravitate towards different toys is not a short way to determine exactly what the cause is. So what you've determined is that it seems to be the case that on average, babies with this feature will gravitate towards objects with these descriptions, and babies with these features will gravitate towards objects with these descriptions. This reminds me a little bit of the way people use twin studies sort of naively, as if this is an example of completely removing the environment from IQ outcomes. But people are very naive about how they've determined these. Leaving aside the fact that studies themselves are incredibly fraught, people sort of assume when we're talking about scientific studies that the children were therefore like, actually, that these elements were like robustly controlled for in their everyday lives, as if they were in some kind of sterile laboratory. But it takes 5 seconds to think about it to realize that this can't be the case. They are aware of both twins in these studies. Stands to reason there is some common point of contact between these twins. They have the same family members. They may have met each other. They may be in the same neighborhood. They likely would have to be both be studied by the same study group. Moreover, they've also shared the common environment of the womb. The mother has like ingested things while she was pregnant with both of them. She has experienced things while she was pregnant with both of them. She has the same genetic disposition. She has but in addition, like she herself both is the environment and is herself in a specific environment. Like you actually haven't controlled for these things really at all. Similarly, like when we're talking about like them like studying babies before a certain age, people pick out baby clothes before they're born.
Mm-hmm.
People have gender reveal parties. People will paint walls. They will paint walls blue or red or pink or purple or whatever, based upon the ultrasound shows about the baby's biological characteristics. So we actually haven't controlled for any of the environmental factors that could give rise to babies with these physical features gravitating to these objects and babies with these physical features gravitating to these objects, even assuming, and KidNotKin, who's actually looked at these studies apparently, seems to think otherwise, even assuming that these are actually replicable. So
it's actually even worse than that as well, because what Tom goes on to do is to say that, like, first it is a fact that like little boys and little girls after being born, or not even after being born, but within the first year, which is a lot of time, within the first year gravitate towards these types of toys. But not only that, but this is reflective of what they will how they will act later in life. He says here, differences between men and women are driven by biology. We actually don't. This isn't actually a fact. We don't know if biology is being driven, to what extent biology is being driven, and to what extent people are being driven by biology. We just don't know. We just don't have the research on that yet. So just outright saying that people are driven by biology, and that like these studies, which haven't been replicated, persist throughout someone's life, is all of a sudden not just saying that like we're predetermined to fit into a particular way of thinking, but you're also saying that there is no. This is basically making an argument that, like he said, was wrong at the beginning of this essay, where he says that like you can't really make the argument that it's completely nature or completely nurture. If we're driven by biology, you're kind of eliminating the social function. You're kind of eliminating like conditioning altogether.
Well, he's sort of implying. I think he actually says earlier on, if memory serves, that socialization, he thinks that people believe socialization begins at like the age of 2 or something like that. And so therefore, if you measure them before the age of 2, you've somehow eliminated the effects of society and environment on the child's development and proclivities. That stands in strong. Yeah, that stands in strong need of substantiation. That's not like you just assuming that, oh, we measured a baby, therefore it's biological, is preposterous. Babies have the constant attention of other people. And I mean, why even bother to go there? Like you're measuring like the exact same dynamic as women on average tend to wear clothing from this aisle, men on average tend to wear clothing from this aisle. Biological? How does that follow? It's exactly the same move. You think that because babies have only been exposed to like a sort of a minimal degree, that therefore that minimal degree is not effective? I don't like, and a minimal degree in terms of like length of exposure. So presumably a baby has been exposed to the red fire trucks on their wallpaper for less time than a child that's had the opportunity to age 5 years. But maybe that's like maybe like the small little things that you're exposed to as an infant are actually like massively effective, sort of like how children experience time differently. An hour's wait is like 5 hours, whereas for an adult, like 3 hours wait on a train ride may pass like it might feel like too fast if you're trying to get work done or something.
I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know
but
what time is.
you're different, Aiko.
I'm special.
Okay, let's do the next paragraph.
Okay, cool.
Are you still reading, or do you want me to?
I can read if you want.
Okay.
Saying gender is socially constructed is a meaningless phrase. Sex is... Ooh.
Wow, look at that. Boom.
That's interesting. Correct, Tom. Well done. Sex is also socially constructed. All categories are socially constructed. We choose to categorize sex based on gametes. No, a little bit. We do, in present day, tend to categorize sex based on gametes. That's...
I mean, if we're talking about the way that, like, he said that this is about like how everyday people actually gender people. I don't know if he's conflating that with this, because like normal people wouldn't do that. But
well, he's saying sex is also, so he's distinguishing sex from gender to a certain extent in this paragraph. Well, let's see. The fact that gender is socially constructed doesn't mean it is less valuable or doesn't attach to reality. This is true. But differentiating which parts are attached to reality and which parts are only pushed based on nonsensical social norms is the hard and more interesting question. I would say that they can be based on nonsensical social norms and also be attached to reality because they're a part of reality. There are things like skirts that may only diverge based on gender because of social standards. Men wore gowns a long time ago, as well as wigs, makeup, tights, heels, and even posed for pictures in a feminine stance. This is a bizarre paragraph so far that completely belies like several previous paragraphs. But these things were considered masculine back then because they were stereotypical of males. But why, Tom? It could be that men only got the newest and coolest stuff right when it came out. Hey, Aiko, how does it feel being the hand-me-down gender?
I mean, that's actually that's not a bad way to put it.
I know. I was just...
Yep, because it's
not
true.
wrong. Okay. It could be okay. Men get the newest and coolest stuff, which they do. But eventually, it evens out to where our biology has the longer lasting impression and the final say. So it was proved over time through the powers of evolution that women are more appropriate to high heels. Oh my God. Meaning women could wear skirts and heels now and forever. He literally says that.
Nice. Okay.
Now
I spoke too soon.
and forever.
Maybe
This is the end of history. Okay.
maybe males naturally feel less comfortable in clothes that leave their gonads uncovered because theirs hang and females don't, which is why, of course, women present day all wear crotchless yoga pants. Maybe women naturally care more about their appearance than men because they're more sensitive. And there's an E in there for Tom, where more comfortable things like skirts and heels get up earlier every morning to shower, shave their legs, do their hair, and put on makeup. Okay, so I quick point of information here, Tom. We streamers are unusual. So your partner getting up earlier than you to shower is not a symptom of her being female and you being male. It's a symptom of your job being on YouTube. Maybe all beauty standards are actually set by the way women judge each other, and men are socialized into judging them by the same standards. So we're in a matriarchy, apparently. It's rare to have clear-cut data that proves something is socially constructed or socially enforced. In the case of gender, it will be the lack of biological evidence that makes social construction more likely. And currently, we have very little evidence of gendered characteristics that are biological.
Huh? What? Wait.
I mean, isn't like the go-to always pregnancy? That's pretty biological. Anyways, meaning the differences still exist, but only in small ways. The extreme ends of the gendered spectrum are likely small differences between the sexes that have been over-exaggerated over time and socially reinforced to pressure everyone into preforming the most exaggerated version of themselves. Hulk Hogan and a 50s-style housewife would likely never happen without gendered expectations widening the spectrum more and more to exaggerate the small differences between the sexes.
This is
This is a weird combination
contradictory,
of
right? Right?
yeah, it's a weird combination of
Within
like really
itself?
accurate and like completely out
No.
to lunch.
Yes.
You guys talk about this one. I'll be right back.
This
Okay.
is yes. Thank you. That's what I mean when I say that I felt gaslit by takes.
You know what this feels like?
What?
KidNotKin was talking about Hegel earlier. This feels like reading Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, where the paragraphs are like completely incomprehensible, and then he has like a perfectly lucid sentence at the end that makes sense, but you're not confident actually corresponds to anything previously that was said. So here, Hulk Hogan and a 50s-style housewife would likely never happen without gendered expectations widening the spectrum more and more to exaggerate the small differences between the sexes. Leaving the spectrum thing out of the equation, that is a 100% true sentence.
Yes, that is but yes. Right.
Yes.
But he's saying, okay, so he's saying though that gendered expectations come from he says so many different things. It's hard to like remember what he's asserting and what he's saying is a misconception or lay people think or most people think. Does that make
Okay, so going a bit earlier back, it's rare to have clear-cut data that proves something is socially constructed or socially enforced. In the case of gender, it would be the lack of biological evidence that makes social constructions more likely. So what's almost universally referred to in terms of the origin specifically of gender categories mapping to biological sex
yes.
is that in the reproductive process, the party with certain equipment becomes relatively immobilized versus the other party.
Well,
Relatively.
but also it's like if you think of Hulk Hogan and a 50s-style housewife, the housewife
Yeah.
has like hourglass figure type thing. That's like a feminine, like these.
That's the first thing I
Yes.
thought of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So it's like you can take a sentence here and there and it is like a lucid thought if you divorced it from everything else. And from the other lucid thoughts too.
Also, when he's talking about widening the spectrum, this sort of belies the notion that it was already situated between two poles.
Mhm.
Because what are these things widening towards?
True.
It seems like it's the poles themselves that are shifting, which would imply sort of the primacy of gender as a purely social construct, not as biologically based. Because if it was biologically based, it should shift with biology. The changes should reflect some kind of like shift in terms of how biological males and biological females sort of form, where hips are getting wider, breasts are getting larger, and the use of pink is getting wider, or something like that. I don't know. This doesn't seem to follow logically. It seems to be like if they would likely never happen without gendered expectations widening, then what are we referencing when we're talking about that which is expected of the female sex or something? You know, like.
What would Hulk Hogan have to do? I think was a good thought. What would Hulk Hogan have to do to exhibit the proper traits that would put him on the female feminine side of the
Well,
spectrum?
when we look up here, so he says maybe women naturally care more about their appearance than men. They're more sensitive and they wear more uncomfortable things like skirts and heels, get up earlier in the morning to shower, shave their legs, etc. He's defining men essentially by a negative in this context. These are things that they do that men don't do. So here's what's kind of perverse. Hulk Hogan would have to take positive steps to appear as obviously a woman to Tom, but a woman would
Stop
simply
looking
have
like
to
shit.
neglect steps to appear as a man. So a woman, a biological female who identifies as a trans man for Tom, would be more or less valid based on how neglectful they were of these things.
Right? How long can you go without shaving your legs before
Which
you are a
seems-
man? No
Yeah,
matter
well, which
what.
also
In these particular instances, I'm not quite sure that he would say the same in terms of negation when it comes to other concepts of like masculinity and femininity. I think he just happened to give negative concepts. I don't know if we can assume that that's the case. Like if we're talking about like the fact that little boys like
wait.
fire
Wait a
trucks and
sec.
working, etc.
Wait a sec, though. Not so. This is the crucial sentence. Women are more sensitive and therefore wear more uncomfortable things like skirts and heels. Why did men innovate the high heel? You see the problem? If they wear more uncomfortable things like skirts and heels, why did men wear the high heels first?
Wait, are skirts uncomfortable? I need to find out.
Also,
I mean,
why is the idea that why do women want to wear things that are less comfortable?
Also,
Well,
Scottish
obviously
men wear kilts.
the male thing, right, is that, it's the dangling stuff, right? It's the hanging gonads. So, yeah.
Yeah, but that's a thing that would actually make, skirts more comfortable for men. No?
Well, have you okay. Well,
like if you wear really tight jeans, there's discomfort associated with that. Like your junk sticking out of that in awkward ways. It gets caught on things. Like
Wait,
it's like
but like,
Yeah, you gotta
okay,
move your junk around.
just this sentence.
you ever accidentally like zip your zipper on something? It's excruciating. It's terrible.
But they're more sensitive. Okay, women naturally care more about their appearance than men because they're more sensitive and therefore wear more uncomfortable things and do more. Okay, because they're more sensitive to social pressure? Is that what it is? Or what do you mean by sensitive exactly?
Like wouldn't sensitive like tend to gravitate you towards comfort?
Right, which means that socially there is pressure that results in more discomfort in not doing the more physically uncomfortable things, right? Because if you're moving towards the more or the less uncomfortable thing. Does that make sense?
Also, like someone in the chat pointed out, men's suits can be incredibly uncomfortable. Now, that's
Yes.
generally if you have an untailored cheap suit, which I'm sympathetic to because most of mine are that.
I'm not saying that.
I like the feeling of a fitted suit.
Of a fitted suit is the
Yeah,
crucial
yeah,
thing. An unfitted suit is like wearing toilet paper.
Also, these are not even real jeans. These are just leggings in disguise. I could go rock climbing in these, and I can fall off my chair. So, I'm not wearing anything uncomfortable. Mostly.
Well, I guess the obvious conclusion, Aiko, is
I'm not a
that
woman.
There's no female representation on this panel. This is a bit of a problem.
This is a problematic conversation.
In fact, technically, I'm wearing the most comfortable outfit of all of you.
So you're the most female. Or male. Wait, what are you? Shit. How are we supposed to identify other people's self-introspection without the levels?
Well, I haven't shaved my legs, so I don't count yet. But
what level are
someday.
you if you don't shave your legs?
Like
In the Brittany
7.
Simon sense?
Yeah.
A 1.
A 1. Oh, okay.
Okay. Next paragraph.
Maybe. all beauty standards are actually set by the way women judge each other. Oh, wait.
Wait.
Down here. I scrolled up. Gender is both biological and socially constructed. It is both nature and nurture. There is, that's a
This
big
I
thing.
mean, this contradicts the studies that he was linking to above, but
It does, and I'm also like the nature and nurture distinction itself is heavily fraught, but we can.
yeah.
There is not a number or percentage you can find that will represent how much of each applies to each human's gender. We don't have the ability to say a person is 87% masculine and 13% feminine and therefore is a man, which is strange because you described it as being on a spectrum, which is what that directly implies. X being reinforced by biology only means that you are more likely to do X, not that it is guaranteed. Your brain can change based on experiences and sometimes will prioritize some stimulation over others. So I once suffered a serious head injury and then became a woman afterwards. Your brain can change based on experiences. It's plausible someone may have a biological drive to do X and Y at the same time, but the social group they want to be a part of values Y over X. That person's brain may prioritize acceptance into this social group, and therefore will value Y over X to the point that X is non-existent in their life over time because social existence brings more stimulation.
Acceptance.
Brings more stimulation, is what he says.
Yeah, social acceptance brings more stimulation.
Social acceptance. Yeah, social acceptance brings stimulation. He's once again like he's putting his finger on something, but in the wrong place. What he's describing is exactly what people do when they have gender dysphoria in a society where gender norms are heavily entrenched. We humans are social animals and don't have many parts of our brains that aren't influenced by other people, and this includes our gender. We are also tribal by nature and congregate with and mimic those we share commonalities with. That is nope. Seeing people of the same.
Wait. Never. Okay, we'll get to it. Okay, we'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
That is okay. Sussy Baka.
Oh well, yeah. Seeing people of the same sex expressing their gender one way may make us more likely to do the same. There may even be a biological drive towards one thing early in life that fades over time, yet the expected characteristics are still expressed completely for social reasons. Meaning a person could care very little about their masculinity and may not have the biological drive to express themselves in a masculine fashion, yet they do anyway because that's what's easiest or what's expected. So I'll let Kid respond to this one, but very quickly on the nature and nurture point. This is a false dichotomy, primarily because we create our environments, not just as a reflection of how we are already conditioned, but as behaviors replicate. And they become more. The environment is also changed. We are also a part of our environment. So not just like socially, but also at a biological level. Case in point, we don't breathe oxygen because oxygen sort of suffused the earth prior to the existence of life. It's actually kind of the opposite. There were organisms that emitted oxygen after processing gases on our planet before, and as a consequence of that, like the life was not conditioned by its environment, or not solely. Life also created the environment itself, and then also like forms the environment for other things. Plants become the environment for other animals, which become in turn a part of the environment for those plants, and over time, like a condition to those plants' survival in their present form, things like that. Similarly, like in terms of nature and nurture, like you can't actually separate these things, primarily because how organisms behave under certain physical conditions, including things like pregnancy or being a heat or stuff like that, is going to be conditioned by their environment, which is going to be conditioned by how they respond to their environment and how they respond to each other and things like that. So it's not that simple. It's not like you just have like here's just a blob And the question is whether if something in the environment poking it enough causes it to change, or if something intrinsic about the blob causes it to change over time. It's going to be both responding dialectically to each other. Kit, sorry.
Okay, well the biggest thing that sticks out to me is switch the screen. That we are also tribal by nature and congregate with and mimic those that we share commonalities with. Seeing people of the same sex expressing their gender one way may make us more likely to do the same. While like this is true to an extent, I feel like it's sort of also like posing gender expression as something which is still affirmative, right? That it's still this thing that like you choose to do because it's easy, it's simple, it's just there, like it's whatever, which totally overlooks the process of like social expectations as something which is like as, if we're talking about masculinity is something which is reinforced like in a particularly violent way. For most of these characteristics, this is not something that you necessarily ask to do, right? Like men don't just decide, oh, you know what, I'm going to be like emotionally reserved, I'm going to like not participate in like expressing myself in these ways just because it's easy. It's like, no, it's actually incredibly hard. The way that men are socialized into being rigid, into not expressing emotions, etc. This is something which you're pressured into doing, technically by threat of violence. So like, just to say that it's like this natural fluid process is not actually true. There's also other implications that you can draw out from being tribal by nature and everything you said here, which I mean you could run into if you want to.
Well, I mean, my immediate thought is what he's taking this from is from a very historically uninformed meme in a lot of right-wing circles, where people are tribal in the sense that they tend to be most comfortable in the presence of people who share superficial similarities with them. This completely overlooks the fact that, for example, the success of quote-unquote Western civilization, if you will, is intimately tied with a history of combining radically different traditions in highly localized spots and types of innovation that were the accidental results of extreme alienation and things of that sort. And that it was only very recently in time that people actually had strong proclivities or negative interactions with each other on the basis of commonalities or dissimilarities, as opposed to the interests of discrete groups. So like cities or tribes that were competing for territory and weren't actually hostile on the basis of differences between them. In fact, if you look at one of the like most interesting features of like ancient Greek literature, for example, even when they're describing situations of war, is how they are extremely, like it's remarkable the extent to which they will go out of their way to humanize, justify, and rationalize the actions of opponents. In fact, that's sort of taken as like a point of honor, that your enemies are things with a similar level of dignity as yourself. So like Herodotus, detailing the history of the war of the Greeks and the Persians, he valorizes the Persians to an extreme degree. When you read Thucydides, he valorizes the Spartan Brasidas as the most Athenian of the Spartans and things like that. It's only like really recently in time that we start seeing people as a result of ideological constructions, very recent ones, largely again as copes, beginning with the French Revolution, where you had a bunch of nobles who conceived of themselves as being part of like a noble German tribe that had conquered sort of like the slave races of France. Were forced out of their privileged position by the revolution, and then suddenly reconceived of themselves as being like the superiors, overrun by an unruly mob of natural slaves, because that made them feel better about the fact that they had been overpowered, despite the fact that the sense of superiority was based upon their conquering earlier on.
I have no
we-
idea what we're saying anymore and what this has to do with
Okay,
dangling
look.
peepees. With peace and love. With peace and love. I'm just saying.
Long story short, we are not tribal by nature. We are tribal initially by by incident, and when people say we are tribal by nature in present day, they aren't actually talking about tribes. They're talking about they're sort of post hoc justifying the onboarding of an ideological stance which insists on privileging people of a common physical or national description for various reasons other than actually natural necessity or something like that.
I don't think that was effective enough. I essentially think about like the ways that like for a lot of men, suffering is seen as like a virtue. Is seen as something which like you can incorporate to like this value of yourself.
Highlight my message.
Right. It's something that can be reappropriated back into it's like you know, like yes, I went through these hardships and yes, it sucks. Yes, it was terrible or whatever, but it made me who I am. When we're talking about like masculinity and the way that people conform to gender expectations as something which is like something which they would prefer to do, it's sort of like running the same conclusion of like it's only post hoc doing that. It's only post hoc like justifying the gender distinction, basically. Does that suffice?
No, that sucks too. But that made more sense.
I'm gonna say that I just want to get to the curse conversation. Whatever it is, these conversations that make sense need to be put to the side for a different day when we're not talking in the context of whatever of this.
Okay, you want a curse conversation? The first person to coin the term gender identity was a man named John Money. John was brought a young male named Bruce whose penis was burnt off in an accident. I thought his penis was I thought it was a botched circumcision.
Yeah, that's
it wasn't his penis wasn't burnt off in an accident.
Burnt off in an accident. Face.
John advised the parents to raise this child as a girl, Brenda. Brenda did not adhere to being raised as a girl and refused to get vaginoplasty. Brenda still expressed very masculine characteristics and became very depressed from gender dysphoria. It seems all people want to be viewed as the gender they identify as and naturally do gendered things without noticing. That doesn't really follow. Detransitioners report their transition experience to be a traumatic experience, likely because they too developed gender dysphoria after initially transitioning. Lots of people may believe they don't actually care about their gender only because their gender identity and expression have always aligned so naturally. If they truly didn't care about their gender, they would be more fluid. Gender fluid people do exist, and these are people who truly don't care about their... I don't think that's true.
What?
No, they're gender fluid.
They don't care about their gender?
But they do, though. Like, there are cis people who don't care about their gender, who don't think twice about, for example, dressing in male or female garb if they're like cis women or cis men. But typically somebody identifies and bothers to tell you that they're gender fluid precisely because they do care. It's just fluid. They are more willing to experiment and be viewed in a variety of ways on a consistent basis in a way 99.99% of people wouldn't be comfortable with. I mean, I guess sort of like as a consequence of being fluid, that would happen. It was mentioned earlier that some may exist within a wider window on the spectrum 1b, which means the spot in which they envelop takes up more space on the spectrum than others.
I'm leaving the gender system. I reject this wholesale. No, just no.
Tom says no.
Well, it's too bad. You can't.
Okay, you're gonna have to tell him yourself. You're gonna have to tell him yourself when he comes in.
Yeah, I will.
Gender fluid people do not only exist on the spectrum, but they are enveloped by a very large area covering both feminine and masculine areas, and even most of the spectrum. But anyone who isn't gender fluid will inhabit a small section of the spectrum and stay there for their entire lives.
I don't know
This is
where
strange.
does he. I don't know why he thinks that he can say this. Well, I mean, he can, but where does this confidence come
Well, hang
from
on.
in stating as if it's
It's
facts?
a-
Oh, no, hang on. Wait a goddamn second. Unless he's going to imply that every single trans person is gender fluid. When he says anyone who isn't gender fluid will inhabit a small section of the spectrum and stay there for their entire lives.
What section? How much?
Well, I guess.
How much of
Yeah,
the middle?
I'm just saying that people are conditioned into particular
Yeah.
like static roles of expression or ways of expression. That's it. And then like gender fluid people just move around, and that's just what they do.
Well,
Gender
you know
fluid
what?
people are just over here dancing on the spectrum, and we're just like, fuck, I don't know what to do with you. So
These
this
people
is just
cannot.
him explaining that happens.
These
Well-
people can't get over the dough thing. Can deer be a gender?
Oh my
Oh,
God!
no!
Stop it! No, stop
Oh,
it!
If you can
Stop.
mark an area on the spectrum where deer gender would land,
Oh.
it can be a type of gender. Meaning all people who identify as deer gender will land in this spot on the spectrum every time.
That's not the point
That-
of a
That deer. No, it is like
Wait, hear it out. You gotta read it through.
that deer gender would be a quote type of woman unquote or quote type of man unquote in this case and not a gender on its own because it would still rely on femininity and masculinity. The problem is that deer gender will never end up in the same place every time on the spectrum. Why? Because it has nothing to do with femininity or masculinity. It's like, wait a minute, how can you be non-binary if you're not feminine or masculine?
Do you think he
It's-
forgets what he says like immediately?
I think he's forgotten what he says here. It seems some people learned about gender identity and then thought all identities were now also gender. Yes, actually, a little bit. You're so goddamn close. He's so close. There are millions of identities, and they are all different from gender. One could have different pronouns based on those identities, and it still wouldn't be gender. If one were to tell you they have a different gender than man or woman, show them the spectrum and ask them where that identity lands.
Sorry, I
we
just
don't-
imagined showing someone that diagram.
Are you a girl
Where
deer
are you?
Or a,
Answer me!
A boy deer. Okay.
We don't see gender dysphoria from those who need to identify as a deer. Wait, but it's a very poor choice of words if you're trying to sustain a thesis, because if they need to identify as a deer, then that need, frustrated, would be dysphoria. Just as there aren't poor people swearing they're actually rich, even though their bank account doesn't show it. But there are, though.
Wait, what?
There are.
What is with this example? Where did this example come from?
It's wrong. There are absolutely poor people swearing they're actually rich, even though their bank account doesn't show it. That's why people go into debt for status symbols like expensive cars and houses, even though it's outside of their financial range. They just rack up debt. That they actually drive a Lambo, even though it's not in their garage. Though people do attempt suicide at high rates due to financial burdens, people are not attempting suicide at record rates from class dysphoria. People do attempt suicide because of class dysphoria.
What? Wait.
I don't like this term class dysphoria, but people will absolutely commit suicide because they feel like they're not measuring up on.
What's the who I forget who said this? The distinction of middle class people are just temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are constantly thinking that they're going to be able to like be super wealthy in the future, and when they realize that they can't do it and they're going to be working every single day for the rest of their lives. That's like it might even actually be like record rates of class dysphoria. Like
people jump out windows during stock crashes.
Yeah.
The identities can matter in a variety of ways, but gender is different from the rest, and all identities are not gender and will therefore exist on a separate spectrum.
Right. Well, here's the thing. People treat gender as if it is like a transcendent category of identity as opposed to like anything else. Like they treat it as if it's like not another aspect of our like engagement in society, like one of the factors we deal with, you know? Like it's kind of like almost like a
How about
holy
this?
thing. Does
How
that
about
make
this?
sense?
Has everybody like played Dark Souls? I know you haven't, Ico, but KidNotKin, have you played Dark Souls 3?
Enough to get pissed off and turn it off.
Okay, you remember in the beginning cutscene there are those like pilgrim characters with the giant rocks in their backs?
Yeah.
They're like horribly physically warped as a result.
Mhm.
Well, like imagine that person in a social situation. They have made decisions. Actions have been done to them, and they have taken actions in their life that led to them being in a situation where they are massively burdened by a giant bloated rock on their back. Okay? Every single person, by dint of being born with the same features as them, would not therefore be equally suited to the exact same social role once that person is sort of like bloated with a rock on their back. When we sort of assume that sex differences or biological characteristics of the sort of like you have ovaries or testes or whatever should dictate your social role, we are sort of assuming necessarily that if you have ovaries and a womb, therefore you will become pregnant. Therefore, your pregnancy will define most of your activities over the course of your life, and so on and so forth. If you have testes, therefore you will not be burdened over the course of your life, and things like that. What's sort of being assumed here is that the bare fact that because you require two different sets of organic properties to reproduce, that therefore the kinds of people that populate a community are going to be stratified strictly and in a privileged fashion along those lines. But that there's no reason to think that necessarily follows at all, because a person who does not has like some set of categories may behave in ways that simply never result in that being the case, or not regularly being the case enough that should define their appropriate role or dress or anything in a social situation, and vice versa, leaving aside the possibility for things like disability, injury, etc., that can all result in that not even being an active option. So what's going on here is a set of possibilities is being hyper fixated upon and privileged above all other ones. Like, here's a question: like, we're insisting that like rich and poor, class, etc., are not genders. But we could understand them in that way. These are actually things that bear very heavily on one's social role, what activities and what endeavors and what places one thinks is appropriate for them. Even reproductive roles can be determined along those lines, and they have been for a very long time.
Right.
It's actually pretty preposterous. Also, first of all, Doe does not identify as a deer. But secondly, let's assume for argument's sake that somebody did identify as
Wait,
quote
Doe
unquote,
uses it's right?
yes. So let's assume that somebody did identify as a deer. What's not being argued is that they're literally a four-legged animal in the woods that's being used to indicate something that doesn't correspond to sets of sort of crystallized social types based upon a hyperfixation on the role of a specific organ of their body. And given the fact that there's no actual reason why, under all conditions, anyone should actually have to be defined primarily by their use of these specific organs in a particular context, there isn't really a reason to think that social roles categorically should always be the direct result of that. We can imagine situations in which like a type of contingent necessity sort of requires like the crystallization of roles along those lines. Like, say for example, there was some external impetus to like reproduce, and everybody had to reproduce sort of like efficiently, constantly, all the time. Well, we can imagine in that case there's some sort of necessity sort of demanding that a group of people, by dint of like particular organic sets, end up immobilized on average more than another one, or not even on average, but like persistently, or things like that. But because that's contingent, there's no reason to take that as determinative of social roles, dress, etc. In short, all of the things that are associated with the feminine in Tom's analysis. Like one of the things you land on by this analysis is that when we talk about sex differences, these are themselves, and it seems unintuitive because we tend to naturally think of gender being downstream from sex, but these are themselves gendered. We're highlighting different types of people by reference to a single set of organic differences. We are not, for example, classifying people in a meaningful sense based upon height, or based upon width, or based upon endurance, or based upon temperament, or based upon hair color, or vision, or like the rate at which their nails grow, or things like that.
So you said earlier that like if I forgot the word that you used, but you made it up. If someone identified as something which they completely made up, then it wouldn't be useful because no one would be able to determine anything about that, right?
Well, the locution wouldn't be without elaboration.
Mm-hmm. So the only thing there with like the deer is the person, you just learning that the person identifies as a deer.
Well,
That's
with deer, with a deer, like with deerness.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, what
not,
Tom says here is, can deer be a gender, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so in this case, like the word
Tom
deer
says a
doesn't even
lot.
need to correspond to like any properties of what we typically refer to as a deer. It's just they have identified their gender as deer. It's sort of like, I mean, to go back to like the example of woman, like when you say your gender is a woman, does that mean you're like the incel depiction of a Stacy? It's like that doesn't follow.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even mean that you're aspiring to that. Like there are highly masculine cis women, or at least people who could be described as highly masculine cis women, who wear jeans and go hunting and stuff like that. Like deer would just be the label for a designation that is not tracked by man or woman.
I mean,
Or is not.
There's only fucking one person that everyone refers to, and that's Doe. And that's, in that instance, it would be like a matter of like, oh, what does this mean to you? And that's
here's the point. Here's the point Butler makes. So if indeed gender, like your social type, is not determined by sex, well, the insistence that the only genders may be man or woman is a reification of that. You're saying that the only genders one can be are still determined by the range of biological sexes there can be. But if gender is not tied only to sex, or is not tied to sex at all, if there are a range of genders beyond, there's no reason to think that that should actually be limited to two, because the limit to two is just a reflection of perceived sex differences.
I mean, I honestly, like, I think that, like, it's off. None of it's so much more than can be. It's mind blowing in the sense of not just the simplification, but like the thought that you can, like, these are the things that you chose to like narrow it down to the main points of gender. Like everything mentioned is an aspect you can talk about. It's just wild that in like a limited amount of pages, what was it, 10, 12 pages, that these are the things. I think that like our relationship with gender is individual. We all have our identity, our relationship with gender, as in like our gender, and also how people treat us based on their reception of what they assume our gender is, and that is tied into biological sex, but it doesn't have to. It isn't limited to biological sex, and it's just all of this. I read ahead, and then I saw like not the word nylons, and I was like, what year is this? Sorry, I'm like
nylons are back in. They're coming back, Aiko.
Listen, it's
I
like
hope so.
it is a huge thing that affects our lives, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It is like you were saying, like a category that does like a when you were talking about what was it, class stuff. It's the way. Fuck, I lost it already. Sorry, I haven't slept for days. Never mind. Continue.
Have you actually not slept for days?
I slept a few hours
You,
last
you
night.
no, you slept last night. I know you slept last night.
Oh, I woke up at 10. Wait, no, 8 p.m. I woke up when I DM'd you.
Okay, I want to finish this so we
Continue.
can get Tom in here.
Yes,
I don't want
please.
Tom
Please.
is
Got two more pages
Please.
to go. We can do this.
We
the
can
last 2
get it.
pages are citations, so yeah, we're almost there.
Will you do it, kid?
Sure. We're at lots of people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of people will.
No, wait. No, we're not.
Wait.
Hang on.
No.
Here, I'll read this, and you do lots of people, okay? If so many gender traits are biological, why separate them from sex? There's overlap between sex and gender. A trait can be both sex and gender. Some are only sex or only gender, and it seems easy to single those traits out. Breasts are biological, but still socially signal femininity. Women and man started as terms for sex. But over time, woman and man started as terms for sex, but over time we used more and more external things to signal our sex. A person painted nails are not a necessary part of one's sex, but these signals eventually came to be thought of as sex in biology as well. Biologists express displeasure in having to constantly explain these differences. This is another area where we gain utility in separating the two categories of sex and gender. The more categories we have, the more things we can express, and that gives us more utility. Kid.
Lots of people will ideologically disagree with the descriptive claims made in this document. They have dysphoria of a different type. The problem is that their brains lie to them. Whoa, dude, wait. Okay, I feel gaslit.
Yeah,
What you're feeling is ideological dysphoria.
This is the thing. Okay, this is really what it is. I just want other people to
You're
feel
a
gaslit
political
too.
woman.
Thank you.
Or something, I don't know.
Okay, the problem is that their brains lie to them. If they saw a petite person with heels, earrings, makeup, a dress, long hair, a purse, shaved legs, under nylons and painted nails, they would call this person a woman. They wouldn't check under the dress for genitalia first.
Unless they're
If they
Poor
Republican.
grandma.
Unless they're Republican.
Yeah. If they say this person isn't a woman for biological reasons, the word would lose all utility. If one can't identify a woman by looking at them, then why identify the difference at all? Should we all go by they, them pronouns unless there's an intent to have sexual intercourse? Should we all use words like man or woman purely based on sex because of the probability that 0.06% of people that we interact with might be a potential mating partner? Of course not. Sex is very rarely the category that we're actually interacting with in any sort of meaningful way. It makes more sense to differentiate between male and man. 99.999 this time percent of the time we
Numbers.
use the word woman in social scenarios. We are communicating gender expression. Sorry. 99.99% of the time we use the word woman in social scenarios. We are communicating gender expression, whether we know it or not. Am I dumb?
Yes.
Okay.
See?
No.
Thank you.
We are saying this person fits the concept of woman. This doesn't mean the word woman is never used to communicate sex, but that it's not the only way that we use the word, and definitely not how we use it in most contexts. It can be an assumption that a man
Us
is also a male, but that doesn't necessarily make or break the concept. It's assumed a dog has fur, but you wouldn't stop calling it a dog if it lacked fur.
Wait, hang on. So let's take. Okay, so
You would call it
let's
naked, inappropriate.
if you can't identify Elliot Page as a man by looking at them, then why identify the difference at all? If it's assumed, so like let's take Elliot Page as an example. It's assumed a dog has fur, but you wouldn't stop calling it a dog if it lacked fur. Okay. It's assumed a man has a penis, but you wouldn't stop calling it a man if it lacked a penis. It's assumed it's a woman if it has breasts, but you wouldn't stop calling it a woman if it lacked breasts. There are women who have had breast cancer, who had their breasts removed. There are men who have had their penises injured and had them removed as well, or also removed for cancerous
Harvested
reasons.
for the Democrats.
Elliot Page looks
Joe Biden.
like a very, very typical, reasonably above average, attractive cis male. If you didn't know anything about his history, you would assume such at sight. I don't think Tom's going to argue that therefore Elliot Page is a cis male, or is I don't think he would argue that he's a male, period, judging from what we've seen here. So, like this last sentence, once again, this doesn't cut in the direction he wants it to. I think he's just confused. I think he's just very confused.
It turns into a Mr. Girl sentence in the next paragraph, just word based.
He's okay. I want to go.
Think it sounds funny. Who wants to read it?
I would like to. So, like, as much as I would like to, like, think that, like, when it comes to the like gender polar system, the polar spectrum or whatever, I would love to think that that people are just vaguely associating just how masculine or how feminine this person is. But if you have like a really, really masculine person, and like an average everyday person is gendering this person, right? A really masculine looking person, they're like all the way on the end. Yeah. If they do that and then they notice a sexual characteristic, they're all of a sudden going to switch 100% to saying that this person's a woman that looks like a man. And so, like, while people aren't like looking for genitalia or anything like that, the idea that it's strictly just based on like whether or not like they're more or less masculine to a certain degree, I don't think is actually dealing with the concept of gender, how people gender people in everyday life. I think in everyday life, people usually, when they gender people, are leaning into sex more so than the.
Yeah, but that's because we're socialized to assume that sex directly corresponds to gender, and so there's an immediate shock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like that's a sociological distinction. That's not talking about like some inevitable attitude that people sort of default to in
yeah, it's absolutely not inevitable. Yeah.
Yeah. I think like in that particular case, like genitalia, once revealed, is performing the same role as clothing and whatnot. But like to go back sort of like to this idea that you identify women and men sort of on sight by reference to their external appearance and things like that. That's not it's not identifying that human beings sort of like naturally intuit what is male and female based on things that are actually downstream from sex characteristics. What's actually happening is people are playing into basically social tropes that are understood to signal womanhood or manhood or things like that, which is why we can identify trans women easily at sight sometimes. Because there will sometimes be cases where like someone has very distinctly gone through like male puberty, but they are dressing in a fashion that signals very much that they are women, and like vice versa as well. There are trans women who are pre like top surgery, things like that, and you can tell absolutely that they went through like a certain type of puberty. But by the way they dress, they can also code themselves as to signal sort of very clearly that at the very least, check before you address them as female or things like that. Like for example, people with like developed chests and whatnot, who wear nonetheless like shorts with like unshaved legs, things like that. Maybe they have levels of facial hair if they're on testosterone or stuff like that. These are people who have exactly the sex characteristics that you're referring to, KidNotKin, that you can sort of identify at sight. But nonetheless, they are coded socially as being men, or at the very least, something that is not woman. Things like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But also not necessarily too, because like cis women can also just not shave their legs sometimes. That also happens.
Well, here's the thing: if you don't shave your legs in a forest and no one's around to see, does that mean you're not a woman? Like, it doesn't. Yeah, all of this is reliant on you being observed, by other people and their experiences and assumptions.
It's a little known fact that if women don't shave their legs for long enough, they will in fact look like Hulk Hogan.
It's true.
It's just inevitable.
Your
Cat.
pee-pee seed becomes a flowering pee-pee. Remember,
Exactly.
we were all female before. If you have nipples,
To that point, one might say that the definition of a woman is based on genitalia.
wait, I want to read this one. I want to say it out loud.
Okay. You get it.
Okay. Okay. One might say the definition of a woman is based on genitalia. These same individuals believe they should know that a young person has a vagina in order to call that person a girl. Don't ask about young girls' vaginas. And they think it should be normal to point at a young human in front of their parents and strangers and say, "Hello, little girl," aka "Hello, 6-year-old with a vagina." Since they want pronouns and gender. I think that he's gonna have a fine take just from this sentence.
Yes.
Since they want pronouns and gender to align with genitalia so badly. If someone points and asks, "Do you see that woman?" everyone will be looking for the same thing, a feminine adult human, and denying this is denying reality. You might say you could be wrong about their sex if they look like a woman but aren't a female. You can't be wrong if this is what is actually being communicated. Okay, that part, no. Sex is a part of what's being communicated, but it is not all that's being communicated. It's not that you're communicating it. They are indicators that maybe you can not necessarily escape, or that you is a part of you and tends to be is associated with a different gender, etc.
So here's where I think he's being confused. In a society where historically we have gendered people according to biological sex, there will be tropes people are conditioned to identify with or against that are themselves based on biological sex. Therefore, there will be people in this your cupcake, there will be people in this society in the modern day who will de facto be communicating something historically associated with having a specific genital set.
Hold on.
Their
Sorry,
clothing.
I need to cut. I'm a fucking cupcake. Sorry. I wanted to clarify. I didn't mean like a person born in a forest that hasn't seen other people and then they're just a person. I mean, like, if someone went camping alone, do they stop being a woman? Okay, just to be clear. Cool.
We were all wondering about that.
No, I'm just saying. Okay, clear. I'm a red velvet cupcake. Okay, I'm not anymore. Continue.
Anyways, so sex will, in a sense, be a part of what's being communicated, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every single person who is playing into a role that historically is communicating sex is necessarily attempting to communicate sex, and there can be external pressures to doing so that do not necessarily validate that clothing as being intrinsically associated with a communication of biological sex. Case in point, there can be a person in such a society that identifies more with behaviors, attitudes, and modes of dress that are the direct opposite corresponding, that correspond to the opposite set of sexual characteristics. Or there can be people who identify with neither, or identify with something that is not appropriate to either, who nonetheless find themselves pressured to fall into line with one or the other based on expediency. So for example, if I had the misfortune of being a trans woman, I would have a significantly more difficult time, pulling off a look that worked for me than I don't know, someone like Conyer, who just seems to manage that much better. Things like that.
I don't know. Have you ever tried though? We don't know how you would clean up.
This is true. I might be selling myself short. Maybe
but
someday, we'll see.
according to Tom, would you be more or less of a woman if you just didn't?
Well, we could do an
There-
experiment with that. We could
Yeah,
do an experiment
like
with
by
that when
talking to
Tom
Tom?
comes into the chat. When
Yes.
Tom comes into the chat, you can just slowly be putting makeup on, and then tell him to say time when it gets to the point where he can now identify you as a woman.
Or if I slowly inch out my pee-pee like Salvo in the car, would I stop being a woman? How much pee-pee can you show before? I don't listen. Never mind. Just a reference. It doesn't make sense to anyone. So, but yeah. So like, do you, if you are someone that is considered unattractive to another person, like if Tom found someone to be unattractive that was a woman, are they any less of a woman?
Oh, definitionally
What?
so.
Yes.
Wait, no, he would argue against this.
But
That
what
was a
if they
joke,
don't
just to be clear.
wear
Yeah,
nylons?
Okay, good. Just making
I'm
sure
not
you were.
expanding much more.
What about nylons? If you don't wear nylons, it's fine.
I mean, I've been
We can ask.
wearing nylons this whole time. Not that anyone
Okay,
cares.
why we lose
Continue.
an entire why would we lose an entire category of traits and conflate them with sex? More categories gives us more ability to communicate than more ability to communicate things, I'm guessing.
Thing.
When the
Thing.
concept of Karen came into the zeitgeist, we all knew what it was. The concept already existed in our brains because we all had seen the pattern, but we didn't have a label for it. We called that person a bitch for the longest time and lost specificity. A Karen is not the same thing as a bitch, but a very specific type of bitch. Creating more words to communicate more things will always give us more utility. Okay, I don't know. Words are only used based on utility. I don't know about that either. You say words to communicate something, and this happens to be what you're communicating with words like woman, regardless of assumed intent. You might ask, but you said that these things originally signaled one's sex, so why wouldn't lots of people believe it still signals sex? And this is a fair question, though gender expression signals femininity. Sex is an assumption that follows, just as genitalia does. But, as explained, we would lose utility in social context if this was the only or main thing being expressed. It is still a safe assumption to believe a feminine person has a vagina, but isn't a necessary component to use the word woman. Just as if I said the word human, you would picture a human-like person. You may define human as a living organism with human DNA, which may come with assumptions that this person has a red heart beating in their chest. But
Oh
what
my
if I
god.
showed you this picture?
Stop. Hold on. I have to switch to YouTube. Hold that thought. Here's a link because I set the thing for this exact time. There's the link. I'm just doing that. Okay.